Incoming.
Welcome to From the Bunker. I'm the host for today, Burke, and I'm here with Corey from the Nasty Guard podcast, also known as Ados Acktual.
So I'm Corey, like he said, or Ados Acktual on Instagram. I just retired from the Army back in August of last year with 16 years. Started off on the Active First program, ended up going to Stewart for a little bit, and then was with Third ID, and then thought that, going to the Guard was going to, kind of get me away from that environment a little bit. And I actually liked active duty, but I was ready for that change of pace, slow down a little bit, and I went to the Georgia Guard and got sent to a scout platoon at first, and I hated it. That's not what I was looking to do. I wasn't looking to be a sniper or a spotter or anything like that, and it was we didn't get a lot of training or anything. Then I got put into a Delta company to deploy, and I went to Afghanistan the first time in 2009, 2010 for about 14 months. Train up altogether was closer to 2 years, but just like time in country until the time that we were done was right at about 14 months. Took a little break from the Army, got out, was a civilian for a while. Didn't like it very much. I missed having something to do. I missed having like a sense of purpose of like serving something greater than me. I miss the camaraderie, and as silly as it sounds, man, like I really missed being out in the field. I really miss just sucking with my friends, like I don't know what it is about it, but some of the best conversations, some of the best interactions I've ever had with human beings in general have been like during a mute of 14, like a week long in the field. You already ran out of stuff to do. You've already done everything that battalion laid on, and you're still got like 5 days in the field left. But I kind of liked that feeling of just being out there stuck, hungry, cold, tired, but you got 40 other dudes, 40 of your friends are out there with you, cold, hungry, and tired as well. And I came back in, and because one of my boys told me that they were deploying, and I was like, yeah, sure. I'll go back to Afghanistan for chapter 2. So I went back to Afghanistan in 2019, 2018, 2019. I was only over there about 5 months this time. The rest of my unit was over there for about 9, but they were offering opportunities to come home early, and I had some stuff going on back home that needed some extra consideration, so I came home early. And then I volunteered for recruiting, and that was a nightmare. Recruiting is like the worst organization I've ever been a part of, ever.
And that was for the Guard recruiting, right? For
Yeah,
Georgia?
yeah. It was. I was on Team Charlie 2, which is the Northeast region. So my region was basically like Augusta. So Fort Gordon to Fort Stewart is a good way to put it. I had a massive region that was broken up between me and like 4 other recruiters. I was driving all the time, dude, like probably a minimum of 9 hours a week driving to, because where I'm at in Augusta, we have 2 MEPs that are close to us. Atlanta is closer, but Atlanta only takes certain stuff for their MEPs. So we had to use Fort Jackson because they're a major MEPs. But that was like a 2.5 hour drive. So I'd have to go pick kids up, bring them back, take them there. Not to mention, like, it was when COVID had just started. So you couldn't get into high schools. You couldn't go out in public. Like, just everything you needed to do to be a good recruiter, you couldn't do. Um, I went for a PHA, and they did like a TBI baseline thing on me or whatever to see where I was at with that, because I had been complaining of headaches and everything, and I had a TBI that was bad enough that the Army wanted to put me out. So they gave me an option. It was like you can stay in right out until your ETS, which would have been December of 22, and you can walk away, or we can medically retire you like right now. And I was like, okay, well, what's the difference, right? Like, am I going to get paid if you retire me, or, is this just like discharging with extra steps? And they were like, no, we'll go ahead and they basically handle your VA side for you in a med board. So for anybody that doesn't know what a med board is, it's basically like you're jacked up and the Army doesn't know how jacked up you are. So they have to send you to some test for like some outside, like a outside contractor, a third party person, but it's not the VA, it's a contractor that the VA has by law. And all they do is they document your injuries, where they came from, et cetera, et cetera. And then they make a decision like, are you healthy enough to retain? And I was non-deployable. So, Mattis came out with that guidance in like what, 2018. It's like, if you can't
Yeah.
deploy, you're gone, right? Um, so they recommended me for retirement. I concurred, basically. I had an option to accept that or fight it. And I was like, shoot, dude, if they're already going to do all my VA stuff for me, um,
Yeah.
I might as well take advantage of having somebody else fight my case instead of having to do it on my own. And I did that. And from the time it started in January of 21, I literally just retired in August of 23.
Holy shit. I
So
mean,
I
it's not as
spent,
bad as the VA probably, but holy shit.
yeah, no, I literally spent like the last year and a half of my Army career on Title 10 Ados, but I didn't have to report to anybody. I was in like some medical hold
Yeah.
platoon or whatever, so all I had to do was like call once a month and be like, I'm alive, and I'll go to my appointments and send them the paperwork. And they called me probably like November of 22. So like I knew I was getting out, and we were just waiting for the documents, and they were like, congratulations, you got promoted to E6. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you got promoted to E6. And I was like, how? I tore my ACL at ALC, so I didn't complete the course. So how did I get E6? And they were like, oh, COVID rules. We're able to promote you. So you got promoted and sent back to the line. And I was like, what? To the line? So I called my unit, and the unit was like, yeah, hey, this is me. You can, come to drill if you want to, but, we know you're in the middle of a med board, so it is what it is. And I was like, all right, yeah, fair. Um, and that was it. I started my meme page during that time of when I didn't have anything to do, because I was kind of just, I was lost, if that makes sense. I didn't know what to do. Like, I was transitioning out of the Army. I'd already done all my getting out stuff that you have to do. Um, and I was literally just waiting for a piece of paper for my DD 214, and I was still getting paid. So like I wasn't trying to raise any attention or raise any flags. Like, hey, you guys are paying me to sit around and do nothing. Um, but I was just sitting there one night, and made a I made a joke on a meme page, and they DM'd me, and they were like, hey man, that was pretty funny. Have you ever thought about making memes? And I was like, no, honestly, like I don't think I'm that creative. And they were like, you should try it. So I did, and they fed me some followers for a while. I got up to about 8,000 followers before Instagram took away my last page, and then I started over. But to be fair, like I earned my ban from Instagram the first time. Like I didn't have much chill when I was a meme page at first. I was going after anybody and anything, and that's not a really cool way to do things, if that makes sense. Like I guess it was from a looking back on it, it was, you could tell that I was in a bad spot mentally based off how I was acting and like the things I was saying and people I was trying to pick
Like more
fights with.
toxic than
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah, a
Yeah.
100%. It was almost pure toxicity, no funniness, right? And like there's certain pages that can pull that off, but I don't want to be one of them. Yeah, I was real toxic, and I wasn't happy with acting that way. You know, like I wanted
Yeah.
to be a page that people wanted to talk to. I wanted to be a page that people wanted to come to for information and like try to help people out and stuff. And Craig helped me kind of get onto that road a whole lot. Like shifted me away from being toxic and was like, hey, let's do some good things. And between Craig and my friend Carly, who's a flight medic, she helped me a whole lot. Like actually identify some of like my actions on Instagram and be like, hey, dude, like it's not that funny. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Um, but yeah, it's been a weird ride to get to where I am now, and it's pretty cool.
So,
Here I am on a Saturday getting to talk to another infantry dude on his podcast. Like, life is okay. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't what I expected from retiring, but like, it's pretty dope.
oh yeah, it's a weird path, but I mean, so how'd you So you mentioned you made your meme page, and then you linked up with Craig. So how'd you get linked up with his podcast, or is this something that you guys put together?
So there's another meme page that's just Nasty Guard, right? And he's a bigger page. He's got like 10,000 followers and stuff. And Craig obviously is the Nasty Guard.
I
So
1000% thought they were the same.
no, no, it's completely different. So when they popped up on Instagram at the same time, I was already friends with Nasty Guard. So I slid in Craig's DM saying a bunch of foul stuff like, "Hey, weenie butt, like, why are you stealing my friend's name? You know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And he was like, "Whoa, killer! You know, I paid." He didn't tell me how much, but he was like, "I paid X amount for the trademark to Nasty Guard. Like, I have this, and this." And I was like, "Okay, well, the least you could do would be put that dude on your show, right?" And then, sure enough, his first podcast guest was Nasty Guard, and then he invited me week 2, and I came on there and talked, and like a couple weeks passed, and he hit me up and he was like, "Hey man, I had a lot of fun on that episode with you, and I think we had like a good vibe. Would you be interested in co-hosting?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know, honestly, absolutely. It gives me something to do. And, you know, we get to bring people on like you guys, you know, random doctors and other people from across the military. So we get to meet some really cool, interesting, and exciting people from all walks of life, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, our friendship basically started because I was defending another friend.
So that's funny. I did not know that. So I thought that he was using the Nasty Guard as like a podcast platform. He was using Nasty Guard as like a meme page. So I'm almost positive. I think last night, because I was supposed to talk to him last night, but he was busy. I think I messaged the wrong one. I think I messaged the wrong guy. I'm gonna have to message the I'm gonna have to message that guy and be like, my bad, dude.
Yeah, Nasty Guard is I think he's like a 92 series, or he's like a something mechanic or quartermaster oriented in the California Guard. Excuse me. And then Craig is a 19 series kid in Montana.
I'm almost positive it was either that or I messaged him this morning when I was trying to get a hold of you, and I was like, "Hey, can you like message Corey and see if he's alive?" And it might have been that. I think I messaged him this morning. I was like, "Hey, is Corey alive?"
Yeah, I was dead. We had a episode to record last night, and when we sat down to record it, his laptop just decided that it wasn't going to do anything anymore, so it went into like a hard update that took hours. And he was like, "Screw this, man! You just want to play some games?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" So we played some Madden, some 2v2 Madden, won a Super Bowl or two with that, and then we were playing Hell Let Loose, and dude, that game is brutal.
It's a good game though. It was a
Yes,
fun game.
I literally just downloaded it like a week ago, and my first game, like, I could understand why they called it PTSD simulator, because I would just be like walking, and then the next thing you know, an arty round lands in my lap, and my whole body gets blown to pieces. Or like,
Yep.
I'd be running up to medic some dude, and he's like on proximity chat, like, "Medic, help me!" And I'm running over there to go get him, and the next thing you know, I get gunned down by an MG42, and I'm like, "Oof,
Yeah.
this is rough."
It's an intense game, dude. You guys would like Helldivers, so you'll like it.
I just I don't have the capability to run it because I don't have a PlayStation, and the laptop that I use is so like it's 6 years old, like a 6-year old gaming laptop that's got so many games that have been run on it. Like, I really only use it for Company of Heroes 3.
It's a good game.
Yeah, dude, I love Company of Heroes.
But it'll come out on Xbox. Helldivers will.
Oh, for sure. Same thing with Hell Let Loose. It'll just take time.
Yeah, but I mean, so for Hell Let Loose, because I have a PC, we can crossplay. I'm pretty sure for Hell Let Loose.
Okay.
Almost, almost positive. Because I was playing with one of my buddies on Xbox a couple weeks ago.
That's pretty
I'm
dope.
not
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I've heard it's like a Halo ODST mixed with Starship Troopers.
mixed with like Terminator, mixed with like what's that other one? Can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it's fucking wild. It's also a PTSD simulator.
Oh, for sure, dude. Like, one of my
100%.
buddies sent me a clip of we were like the Russians, and we were trying to run down this super long road. And I, you know, you as an infantry dude, you know where a machine gun's going to be, right? Like you
Yeah,
just
you're coming
know.
up on it. You're like,
You just know, right? And it's like common sense, even if you're in the military or not. If you have a gun and you see a big open road that runs right in front of you, like you're probably going to watch that road. I played a game without the dots or whatever, and I just shot everything that moved. And like this one time, I had a brilliant sector with a machine gun. It was in this lumber yard, and I just laid down in between two parts of lumber so I could cover like this open field, but I couldn't get shot from left or right. The enemy or people just couldn't figure out where this was coming from. So I'm just like gunning dudes down, right? I'm like not even paying attention to uniforms or weapons or anything. It's just I see movement, I shoot movement, and somebody finally kills me, dude. I had like 2.5 minutes worth of penalties from team killing. I
is your
was
team
just
the whole time?
wiping, yeah, dude. I was just wiping my team like every time that they were trying to flank, and I was like covering our own flank and like keeping them from breaking out to get at. But it's like you said, man, that friendly fire is it's wild because like you'll be running and somebody will throw a grenade, and next thing you know, half your team that's running in like this big gaggle just got destroyed by a grenade, and you're all laid out on the ground crying.
It's like one of those because you expect that everyone playing the game has your level of knowledge, which
Right.
is 1000% not true. So you're like, oh, I know like my dudes aren't going to be dumb enough to just cross this open field by themselves. So obviously it's got to be the bad guys. So you start shooting them, and it turns out it's your guys, and they're just that stupid.
Yeah, dude. It's I just learned over the past year about trying to play like first person shooters with people that weren't in the military.
It's
it's
rough.
it's frustrating, yeah, because like one of my buddies, he's pretty good at Rainbow Six and he's pretty good at Halo, but tactically, like we're just not on the same page. If I ping
Hmm.
something, I'm expecting rounds to get put on it or us to at least try to suppress it and maneuver on it. If I ping something, he runs away from it. And I'm like, no, dude, like, don't run away from it. I'm pinging it for your situational awareness. Like, let's go get it. And we would lose so many, like, 2v2 rounds on Halo because I would ping where the enemy team was at, and his immediate instinct is to break contact instead of close with it. And I'm like, come on, dude, just, follow me. Like, come on, this is all we got to do. Or, like, Warzone, hey, I'm gonna sit here on this roof with the machine gun. You go down to the box. And he's, no, let's both go down to the box together. Like,
Teaching like aggression. What's the fucking saying?
violence of action.
Yes, teaching violence of action to people who aren't ingrained with it is impossible.
Yeah,
You can't do it.
dude. One of my buddies is like, he's a college kid and he's super good at Rainbow Six, and he always gets super mad at me whenever we play Rainbow Six because he plays it like a video game and I'm playing it kind of sort of like real life. And there'll be something I'll shoot, and instead of reloading and moving to a new room, like I just push into that room. 7 times out of 10, I'll end up killing that dude. And he'll be like, "Why would you even rush him?" And it's like, because the violence of action was to my advantage, doc.
Yeah.
Like there's some times that if you just have to go, you know what I mean? Like you can't just play this entire game at 50-meter standoff distance and shoot at each other. Like that's boring. I'm trying to get in there, plant the bomb, do stuff, bro. Come on.
So I was looking at, and I talked about this in my previous one, but I'm curious. Did you hear about the Russians getting smoked by the HIMARS? There's
Uh,
so it happened I think 2 days ago, and then again like 5 6 days ago. There was a group of Russians in the woods near Adkiva, or however you say that, Adkiva. You know what I'm saying?
yep.
And some commanding officer brought them out for inspection and brought them into the wide open field, and they got smoked by Ukrainian HIMARS like 60 plus Ka. Happened twice. So I was like laughing about it. I was like, Craig and Corey would like hearing that because that's exactly like how I view.
How army is that, right?
Yeah, that is the most army fucking thing I've ever heard. Hey guys, I know you guys are in cover and concealment. I know you can't be seen by the UAS, but we haven't had an inspection in like 2 weeks. That dude just lost his nods, so we're gonna go out in this field over here.
I need a
We're
green
gonna have
too.
a 100% layout. Okay, pack up all your shit, take it to that fucking field, and we're gonna dump it all out. And then platoon sergeants, you're gonna go through your squad leaders. Squad leaders, you're gonna go through your team leaders, dump their shit, make sure they have all their shit. Smoked by a HIMARS.
That is wild. This this is like a I don't know. I always had like a lingering fear every time we had like an award ceremony in Afghanistan, and all of us would
Oh
be in
yeah,
formation on the fob. And it's like, because you're still being watched, right? And little Hodge over there is just going to pick up his phone and text the boys and be like, yo, shoot now. And I was always worried, man, that like the one time that we would take accurate IDF would be in the middle of like the blanket RCOM ceremonies at the end
yep,
of and then like next thing you know, me and the rest of the company are just completely splattered by IDF. Like commanders, any officers or senior NCOs listening to this, like you can get stuff done without formations, believe it or not.
bingo.
You can literally like get head counts and know who's sick and who has what and who doesn't have what without a formation. Like
100%.
group chats are a thing, and maybe you can't do group chats in combat, but something tells me there were 100 other things you could have done to get hands-on accountability or whatever the purpose of that was without putting them in a barrel to be shot.
I think we kind of touched on this, like um the podcast we did with you guys, but like the the priorities that are set in combat zones
Yeah,
are why soldiers get hurt, and it's why soldiers don't want to re-enlist slash extend, depending on who you are. But and like without getting in like too into detail, I'm like, there's certain people out there who are like show up on base and everyone would be like, oh, now we have to wear PCs. Now we have to
yep,
blouse our boots. Now we have to, do all this stupid extra steps just to make things look like how some specific person wants them to look. And
right,
it's like, how about we focus on fighting the fucking war? Or how about we focus on what we're currently doing, which is reinforcing our living quarters because we get IDF all the fucking time and
right.
we don't have enough T barriers, so we're using sandbags. So like priorities, man. Like that shit has no place overseas. Like,
On my during my first deployment, we were getting rocked early in it. Like we
mm-hmm,
were taking casualties a lot in the beginning, um, and morale was awful because like we showed up and the unit that we were replacing was a different state infantry unit, and they told us we didn't have anything to worry about. They had never been hit. They never had a suicide bomber. They never had an IED, et cetera, et cetera. And then like 30 minutes after this conversation, we're taking IDF. So it's like, okay, either they're lying or the Taliban is just testing out the new patches that they see. Um, our very first mission, we lost dudes. They lost dudes. And that cycle just kind of continued they ripped out
mm-hmm,
immediately afterwards. We kept losing people. Our sister companies were losing people all over the AO. Um, and like our first sergeant and our commander were like, we got to do something to keep the boys invested. So we had baseball hat Fridays. So on Friday, you could wear any freaking baseball hat you wanted instead of your PC. Um, and then we had a very loose dress code for the barracks area. So like the way our fob was set up was the lower enlisted and the team leaders slept on one side. So there were four barracks buildings that could house, we'll say like 40 dudes, right? Two of those were NCO only, and they had their own rooms. And then the other two were literally four platoons worth of dudes shoved into two barracks. Um, and then everyone else, PL's platoon sergeant, stayed at on the other side of the fob, where we called the White House because it was a White House on the fob. Um, but in our area, you could wear civilian clothes, gym shorts or a t-shirt, but like you could only wear one piece of it, and the other part had to be PTs. So like PT shorts, regular t-shirt, or PT shirt, regular shorts. Um, and we loved it, right? Because it's to us like the standard infantry dude. We're getting to walk around like SF with baseball hats and t-shirts and stuff.
yeah,
Like we're getting to feel cooler. We're getting to feel like a person instead of just a machine that you sent over here to do a job. And then lo and behold, our battalion commander decided that he wanted to come out, and he was terrified of Afghanistan. Like he rarely left his own fob. He didn't want to fly. He hated flying. So he made Scout Platoon, which was his PSD, drive him all the way to us, which was like 12 hours. And right before he showed up, dude, there was like a everybody shave, no hats, no shirts, no this. Like everybody had to throw their personal PTs in like a or personal clothes in like a big bag and hide it. Um, because like we were there to do a job, and when the battalion commander shows up, and it's like, dude, I don't know if this is something just gets installed in you once you turn like promoted to E7 to E8 or from O3 or above or something. But none of that detracts from us doing our jobs. None of that keeps us at an increased or decreased state of readiness. None of that gives us increased or decreased lethality. It's a piece of clothes. And guess what, dude? If I take IDF and I get hit and I'm in my freaking gym shorts and an army shirt, pretty sure you're going to be able to figure out who I am, because guess you can reverse head count the fob, dude. You know
Also,
what I mean?
like, if I get hit, you're stripping me anyway. So what's the fucking
Yeah, you're
difference?
going to cut it off. I
Yeah.
lose the
So
money, not you.
there, and I think like sometimes they say it's like, oh, it's that slippery slope where like, oh, one day you're letting them wear shorts and t-shirts, and then next day they're naked. Like,
But
dude,
there's always that one
come
dude who's
on.
going to take a mile when you give him an inch, right?
True,
But you
but
hammer that one dude, not everyone else.
exactly. But
We had
and
um
I'm
we
not
had a
saying it's
dude do exactly that, like exactly that at the end of our tour. When 10th Mountain was coming in to replace us,
get
they were
naked.
like, yes, they were like 10th Mountain, I want to say 1st Brigade, 10th Mountain was coming in to replace us, and they sent their advon, Sergeant Major, Battalion Commander, and all that. The day that they show up on the fob, one of our 4th Platoon dudes is literally butt naked on a cot in the middle of the fob, sunning, like sand tanning, you know what I mean? Trying to get tan because we're leaving to go home. Like we know now because our replacements have showed up. So everybody's like tanning and hitting the gym and getting emergency cycles of steroids in so they can buff up a little bit before they go back home. And sure enough, 10th Sergeant Major walks up and is like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "It's tanning, Sergeant Major." Um, yeah, so the dude, they like dummy corded a cot to him and made him walk around and mop 2 or mop 3 for the remainder of the time.
That's fucking great.
There's always that one dude, because like everyone else is just tanning, like we roll our shorts up in
Yeah,
Ranger panties like a thong or whatever, and so you could tan as much as you could. This dude just out there butt naked, bro, just wiener flapping in the wind and everything.
but that's like so. Yeah, it's on the individual, but it's also up to like a leader like me. Like when I was a squad leader overseas, or like whatever, I knew who that dude was,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
I was like, you, I will fuck you up if you fuck this up for me. Like, do not make me hurt you because you can't just be an adult.
Yeah.
So like, we had a couple issues in that regard, and some of them you can't control. Like we had one dude who like, like the commander would be like, yeah, dude, wear stuff that is comfortable for you. You got to have side plates. You got to have front and back, and you got to have soft armor. Other than that, as long as it's comfortable for you and it's our color, I don't give a fuck. But he would like poke it, and like he'd get like, just over the line to where like that was some civilian body armor shit, or some motherfuckers like wouldn't have soft armor,
Yeah.
or like dude, you're getting to wear whatever the fuck you want. All you have to do is follow this simple rule, and you can't just like not be a dick once.
Yeah. I had one of those problem kids on my last deployment, and I never really had to deal with it, like leadership stuff on my first one. I got forced into a team leader role, but it wasn't really serious. It wasn't like I was the TC. It was just for accountability purposes. Um, but when I on my last deployment, when I was actually an E5 and a team leader and had actual responsibilities, this one dude, like, we knew he was a problem from day one. He failed his initial PT test coming to the unit. He was just always a problem, but he could shoot and he could ruck.
Infantry, perfect.
Yeah. Um, when we got overseas, he just kind of lost all common sense. So it's like no PTs in the DFAC, right? Like that's pretty universal. If you're going to get food in PTs, you get a to-go plate and you leave. Like at least at AP Lightning, that's the rules, right? Like you have to be in uniform. If you're in PTs, you can only get a to-go plate. So me and the squad leader, it's like my best friend, are sitting there eating chow. And we see him, and he's like, "You need to go fix that." And I was like, "Okay." So I go over there, and I'm like, "Hey, private, what's up? You know the rules. You're not supposed to be doing this." And he's like, my bad, Sergeant. I'm here with Master Sergeant so and so, and she's in charge of the choir. And you know what I mean? I'm just talking to her because I'm trying to go to choir practice later. And like this dude is a notorious horn dog, so we know he's not actually, we know what he's up to. Um, and I was like, that's cool, bro. Like y'all can talk about Jesus, but you could do it in full uniform, right? Like you're breaking the rules. And she was like, come on now, Sergeant. Ain't nothing wrong with him being in here in PTs. I was like, Matt Sergeant, with all due respect, I'll tell you the same thing. Y'all can talk about Jesus when he's in full uniform. But for right now, he needs to go put on the proper uniform and not be in here in PTs.
Yeah, he's also my fucking soldier, so step off.
Right. And he brought that up later. He was like, well, she said it's not a problem. And I was like, well, she can come lead you out on your next 15 click patrol. You know
Yeah,
what I
good luck,
mean?
bro.
Like she can take you out on mission if you want, good luck with that, dog. But yeah, there's always those dudes, man. And to be fair, when I was a younger private, I was probably that dude. Like I didn't. I made my team leaders smoke me for fun to give me something to do. Like if I got bored and I got the zoomies, like I was the worst soldier known to man because I was like, I would go up to my team leader and just like poke him until he would get mad and he would smoke me
Oh
and I'd be like,
God.
okay, cool. And then I would get smoked and then like we were at the range one day, right? And we had a tennis ball, so we're playing wall ball on the range tower. The range control's not having it. They're like, stop hitting my tower with a tennis ball. You're gonna cause it's a tennis ball. Ain't nobody causing damage. But he's like, don't do it. And then my squad leader looks over and he's like, bro, I swear to God, if you throw that tennis ball, I'm gonna destroy you and the rest of the squad. And the rest of the squad looked at me. I looked at them and I launched that tennis ball right at the thing and I hit the window, bam, right where range control was. And he was like, oh God. So I got smoked up pretty good for that. They laid the hate on me pretty good, but
But
I wasn't.
you didn't get paperwork though.
No. It was just a
Yeah.
straight up smoke sesh. Like if there was anything paperwork, like once you threaten me with paperwork, I'm going to take your money, I'm going to take your time, I'm going to take something else other than your physical stamina. That's when I would fall in line. But it's like, hey, dude, I'll smoke you. I was that private that was like, you can't smoke a rock, kid. Like smoke me. It's only going to make me that much better, right? That's how I looked at it. Is if you smoked me, you were just making me that much better of a soldier on a physical level. So like I wasn't a bad soldier, but I poked the bear quite a lot. And one of the things that always stuck with me, I wish I would have developed was tact. Like I just cannot sit in a meeting where like the battalion sergeant major is in there and he's telling us how good he's been and he's got this and this and this. And I'm like, respectfully, where are our working saws? And then I get kicked out of a meeting because I called the sergeant major out. Like, but it's a valid question, right? Like, you can't sit here and say, look, I'm this amazing leader and I've given you all this stuff when we haven't had saws that can fire more than 4 rounds for 2 years. They're literally broken. Like, we had master gunners come out and look at them and they're messed up and we can't get them replaced. That's a you thing, not a us thing, dude. So, like, don't come and tell us that you're doing great things and taking care of us when you can't even get us weapons. Like, we're about to go fight a war, my dude. We were literally weeks away from Afghanistan and we didn't have working saws. An entire company, we had
Yeah.
2 saws that would work.
That's pretty common though. Like I don't know how many sensing sessions I've been in where like you bring up a legitimate problem and they're like, "How about you shut the fuck up and get out?" And you're like, "What?
Yeah.
What
So,
do
anyways,
you
what was I
mean?"
talking about? Cigar Day Fridays? Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, like I thought this was the whole point of this, and they're like, "No, yeah, not that one though." All right,
Dude,
I
our
guess.
sergeant major was a douchebag, bro. We had cigar night at AP Lightning on Fridays. It was called Cigar Des, and the chaplain and the chaplain's assistant had like subscribed to some cigar club. So every month they were getting just cigars shipped in. You could just go sit in like this little cordoned off area and just smoke cigars and chill. Normally it was just nothing but officers and senior enlisted. I guess my sergeant major went one time and didn't have a fun time, and he was like, "From now on, no more cigar des." Bro, what? Like what? he he made it like we couldn't go to the MWR unless you signed into the gym first. Like you couldn't go to the MWR and play video games unless your name was on like the sign-in roster from the gym.
This is like overseas.
Yeah, Yeah, it
dude.
was on AP Lightning in Afghanistan, and
That is toxic as fuck, man.
he was like, "These dudes don't have anything to do. Let's set up EIB lanes on a fob in Afghanistan." And then, sure enough, he was trying to um, set up lanes for that, and then it was let's make everybody take PT tests. And to be fair, I could understand the PT test thing because we were actively sending kids to BLC. Like we sent two dudes to BLC at Bagram, and then we sent one BLC dude to Kuwait and like another dude to Qatar. So like I get the PT test stuff, right? Like you're still sending soldiers to go do stuff. But I've always been a big proponent of outside of doing rehearsals for a mission, like I train to go to war. I don't go to war to train. Like there's a time to do rehearsals, there's a time to like practice some stuff before you go out on a mission, especially if it's just some real deal stuff. But I didn't go to war to take a PT test every quarter. That's not war, dog. That's JRTC. Like the difference in how it felt 2009, 2010 to 2018 to 2019, like I realized that I was still in danger and I was still in a combat zone, but it felt like a JRTC rotation to me instead of an actual combat rotation. And it started with how we prepared for it, how they talked about it. Like my first deployment, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. Like we're going to Afghanistan, we're going to go get into some stuff. This time it was like our battalion commander kept telling us that we were going to Korea, that we were going to get retasked to go to Korea, and we were going to end up invading North Korea. Like he would put this out in emails, he would put it out in memos, he would put it like he even talked to our families about it and was like, "Don't be surprised if we end up in Korea." Dog, we are the National Guard. We're not invading anywhere. Like we may be subordinate to a unit that's in the 18th Airborne Corps, but brother, we are not. They're not about to put me on a landing
We're
craft and
not
have me
2 weeks to
invade them.
Pyongyang, dude. It's not
Yeah, no
happening.
way, dude. We're not. You're not about to reenact the Frozen Chosen with the 48th Brigade, bro. Like that would be cool and everything, but no. Like it was so much different. And even when I landed in the country, it felt different. Like Bagram was a ghost town. Like I could go anywhere on Bagram and go get food in 5 minutes or less when it used to take me an hour. Um, there weren't as many like aircraft taking off and landing. Like 2009 and 10, you couldn't sleep at Bagram unless you were in a hard surfaced building because the noise, bro. You had CAS taking off 24/7. So full afterburner CAS platforms a couple hundred meters away from where you're sleeping. You're not going to sleep. There weren't no planes taking off, dude. It was like watching Atlanta, like Atlanta International Airport. It was just big Air Force jets and passenger jets and supply
And
planes coming in.
this was 1819.
Yeah. And I
I
was
was
like,
there
wow,
in
dude.
1920, and yeah, no, it was relatively quiet. When did you leave in 19?
May. I flew out
Oh
of
shit. Okay, yeah.
BAF like May 10th or 12th or something like that.
I think I got there in like September or October.
That's when we were ripping out. So we got over there. Our main body one left like December 27th or 28th, and they actually celebrated New Year's in Kuwait. I was on like main body 3 or main body 4, and
Of
we flew out on January 3rd of 19, and we're on our fob January 7th.
Okay, yeah, but then you left early.
Yeah, so
So okay,
they
yeah.
had a when we only took the infantry and the guns. So we took infantry and artillery. We left our cav dudes in Kuwait. We left our entire cav, everybody else in Kuwait, other than the 3 infantry battalions and the artillery regiment or whatever they're called. And they were getting bored, and we were getting bored, and they came up with like this plan that was like, okay, July is right about the halfway point. So if you want to go home in July, put your name on this list, and we will send home everybody that wants to go home in July as long as we have a replacement. So there was a list of replacements, and then there was a list of people going home, and they would just hot swap you, right? I had some stuff that was going on. I was getting a divorce, right? Like I was over there, and things just deteriorated in my relationship really, really, really quick. Mentally, I wasn't processing it very well. I just stopped sleeping. I don't know why. Like they put me on every medicine they could in Afghanistan and wouldn't put me to sleep. They gave me Ambien. My squad leader would have to lock me in my bedroom and post a private outside of the door because you sleepwalk on that stuff, dude. Like Ambien, one of the weird side effects is like crazy hallucinations and sleepwalking. And I told him, I was like, look, dude, I've taken Ambien before and I will trip balls. And he was like, all right, well, I'll put somebody outside of your room. Good to go. And I was like, yeah, but I still didn't go to sleep. So they ended up telling me like the next step for us to try to put you to sleep is medicine that we can't give you in a combat zone, for your safety and for like safety of other people around you. And I was like, okay. And they were like, so the only way to deal with this is basically to send you home and have them try to fix it. And I was like, okay. So they ripped me out probably a month before everybody else. Um, I had a helicopter come from Bagram. Bagram picked me up, took me to Bagram. I stayed at the because I was traveling with the chaplain's assistant because he was going home too. So he had all sorts of connections at Bagram, and I got to stay at the U.S. SOF-A compound. I had my own room, own air conditioner, own fridge, own everything. If I wanted to go somewhere, I had a number and I just called, and there was this private that would show up with like a Hilux and drive me to wherever I wanted to. And I was like, this is dope, dude. Like, why didn't I become a chaplain's assistant? Um, and then they sent us home different ways. He went through Kuwait, which is what I was expecting to do. And the liaison officer came up to me and was like, hey, Sarnt, your flight's in like 6 hours. You're leaving. You're going to Qatar. And I was like, is that even a real place? Like, I've never heard of a place called Qatar. Where is this? In Kuwait? Is it another place? Is it in Iraq? Is it in Afghanistan? Like, where in CENTCOM is this? And they were like, no, it's a country. And I was like, I've literally never heard of this place. And they were like, I promise it's a country. There's an Air Force base there.
Does not believe
And
them. You're making this up.
right. So I was like, okay. So I get on this plane and there's literally me, two other dudes, and a group of like Air Force security forces dudes, whoever it is that jumps off the plane and secures the plane for him and then hops back on before you take off. Um, one of the dudes that was flying with me was like a CAG guy, and me and him were talking a bit, and then we landed in Qatar, and I was like, "This is awesome," but it was right during Ramadan, so as soon as I got off, I started getting cussed out for dipping because you're not supposed to dip around them during Ramadan, and I was like, "Put in another dip, like I don't care, dude." And they were like, "We won't let you go home," and I was like, all right, no more dipping. Like I got it. It was kind of cool. One of my buddies, Daniel, he's a supply dude in the Air Force. He was stationed in Qatar at the same time. So I hit him up on Instagram and was like, "Hey, aren't you in some weird place called Qatar?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm at Al Udeid." And I was like, "Bro, I just landed at Al Udeid." And he's like, "What?" And yeah, I spent the next 3 or 4 days just getting wasted in Qatar. Um, they have a 2 drink limit, but like half the Air Force people there didn't want to drink. So I would have him like, hey, tell all your little kids that don't want to drink to go get drinks and bring them to me. And I was just wasted for like 5 days in Qatar, dude. And I saw probably like the hottest chick I've ever seen in my life in Qatar. And she was a double amputee. Like she had lost both of her legs. And I was just like sitting in the MWR about to like check out a Guitar Hero controller or something. I can't remember. And she walked in with like both of her prosthetics or whatever. And I was like, I don't know why, dude, but that's the most attracted I'd ever been to a woman in my life because like instantly I was like, dang, she didn't have any legs, bro. And then I was like, but she's still in a combat zone and still getting after it. I was like, yeah, yeah, dude. Like,
She a
and
contractor or something?
I don't know, dude. I was so scared to go talk to her because like I was going through that divorce and stuff, right? So I was like, I got to be a faithful husband. And then, but like the other part of me was like, you're getting divorced, dummy. Like, you could probably go do whatever you want to. I was so scared, bro. She was so pretty. She was so pretty, and like I didn't even want to compliment how pretty she was. I just wanted to be like, you're a badass, bro. Because if I didn't have 2 legs, I'd be at home right now watching this on CNN. I would not be in the desert in Qatar. But
Fuck, dude. Now I
gosh,
need
she
to
was
know.
pretty, bro. Hey, chick that has double amputee, pretty. You know who you are. If you're listening to this, hit me up on Instagram.
Qatar
And
2019.
yeah, pending that you're single and not involved, hit me up. I've got some things to talk to you about.
So you're talking about the no sleeping and they gave you Ambien. Like I think that's wild that they gave you Ambien in Afghanistan. I think that's
Yeah.
nuts.
So
Because
like
like
on my
I
first
could sleep in
deployment, we didn't.
Syria and they were like, yeah, nah, this is we have like these sleeping pills we found out back in the gutter with the dog, and we can give you these, but this is all we got. I'm like, all right. So they gave them to me. Of course, they don't fucking work. I took like, oh yeah, you can take two a night. I took like four. Nothing happened. And they were like, all right, well, that's all we got. And I was like, okay. So I was like, can you at least like document that this is a problem and you can't fix it? They're like, yep. So I just got that email like a couple weeks ago, and
Nice.
it's like soldier service member like complains, can't sleep, given pills don't work. Soldier drinks energy drinks though. So it's like insinuating that because I drink energy drinks, I can't sleep.
Right.
Like
I
fuck you, dude. Fuck you,
on my
dumbass medic.
on my first deployment, we they started giving us stuff to help us sleep towards the end when we moved out of the barracks and moved into these tents. Um, and I remember the first time they gave me Ambien, I was laying on like the top bunk, and I felt like I was on a ship. Everything was doing this, and then like when I focused on something, it would get farther away. So instead of coming closer, it would go farther away. And yeah, and then so like I knew it would make me like trip or whatever, but like when I started not sleeping, I would tell my squad leader like, "Hey, bro, I hadn't slept in like 2 days," and he'd be like, "Why not? You drinking energy drinks?" So like we tried everything, right? Like we cut all the caffeine and sugar out of my diet for a while. We he made me work like 3 straight days, literally like 3 straight days. He was just like, "You stay up here until you know you can go back and go to sleep." Um, Nothing, like nothing worked, and then he was finally like, "Okay, go see a doctor." So they took me to the TMC, and they gave me like hydroxyzine or something. Um, it's really more like an allergy medicine than it is a sleeping medicine. Um, they're like, take two of these, you should be asleep. Bro, I'd take two of those, and I'd just be super jet lagged. It was like trying to like do things after I
Yeah.
just flew 72 hours across the world. Like, and then when they did the Ambien and the Ambien didn't work, it's kind of funny. My medic and I were at the TMC, and we had just gotten a new doctor, and she was hot. She was like a super cute first lieutenant, and she was like a physician's assistant or something in the civilian world. And I went in there and I was like, can't sleep, blah 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 blah. And she reads the notes from the other doctor, and she's like, "Well, Sergeant, you know, you looks like you're having problems sleeping." And I'm like, "Yeah, something like that." And so we're just sitting there talking, and then she looks at me at the end of it and is like, "I'm going to give you this prescription, and if it doesn't work, then you can come to room like B14, and I'll see what I can do to help you sleep." And I looked at my medic and was like, and then I was like, "Yeah, Roger that, man," and left. And then we walked out, and he was like, "Hey, Sergeant, was she shooting her shot at you?" And I was like, "I don't know, man, but I'm married." And he was like, "Nah, you need to go get that." And I was like, "Nah, dude, it's about being a man, you know, being faithful. That's part of being a man, is not cheating, you know. Like you try to be a good dude, and good things happen to you." Because like I've never been one to condone cheating. I've never been one to tell my soldiers like go be a dog or anything like that. Like I want my dudes to be morally sound. Um, because I don't want to have to worry about taking a drop gun because my dudes decided that they wanted. You know what I mean? Like I need to make
that
sure
took
my dudes.
that took such a different avenue than I thought it would.
But I mean, seriously though, like if you think about it, like I always wanted my dudes to be morally squared away, right? Because there are times where your morals are going to get called into question. I need to make sure that you're going to make the right decision, and if you don't, I need to know which decision it's going to be so I can help you get in front of it. I'm all about protecting my dudes. If you screw up, I've got your back. I'll tell you you're wrong, but I'm still going to fight for you, right? I'm your leader. That's what I'm going to do. But like, it was it was weird too, you know, even like you said, they gave me this medicine in Afghanistan, and I'm sitting there thinking like, I don't I don't even like how taking this at home, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but they were saying like the very next step was going to be basically like having to get a shot to go to sleep, and they were like, we can't do that to you over here because it's like if we give you the shot and you go to sleep and something happens, and it's like, give me a shot of adrenaline, right? Like, you know, just counteract it, you know, give me. give me a bump of cocaine. I know y'all got some of that medical grade stuff around here. Like,
Give me
we
the
can fix
morphine.
this. Yeah, we can fix this.
So
But
I
it's
had
weird.
a experience in like it was 2019. It was December December like 10th or 11th, 2019. Ah, fuck, I can't remember. I was up the night before the new Modern Warfare, the remake
Oh
had
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
yeah had just come out. Um, and we well or we had just downloaded it. It was one of those, but we finally downloaded. It took like 4 days to download, so we were trying to played it all fucking night, dude. Like I worked at the time. I can't remember. I think I was doing ECP. I worked ECP like 12 hours or 10 hours or some shit because we lost a bunch of dudes. Like left the country. The drawdown started happening, and we were getting kind of sketched out. Like I think we're leaving Afghanistan again, but like it would be like half a company would just like disappear, and you'd be like, "Fuck's going on here?" But no one knew. So like we started doing like tens and then 12s. I was working for a private company at the time. So we were up all night, like 6 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that rolls around. I finally go to bed. I'm drunk as fuck. We snuck in a bunch of alcohol. I'm annihilated. I wake up on the ground. Like one of my left foot was like still on my bed, but like the rest of my body was like on the concrete floor. We lived in like one of those big concrete like
Yeah.
structures. It fits like I think it's 8 dudes or 10 dudes, and it's all separated by like wood walls and shit. But like you could like reach over them and like fuck what they do on the other side. So like I woke up on the ground and I look at my roommate and he's like on the ground. I'm like, what the fuck? And our TV is upside down and like all the shit's on the ground and shit. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then I hear like shit hitting the roof. I was like, what the fuck is that? And I realized it's like the aftermath of like an explosion and like all the shit is like still falling. I'm like, oh, okay, so something happened. And we had been getting rocketed a lot, and I was like, oh, okay. But I'm hungover as fuck. Like I have a raging headache. I'm super dehydrated. I can barely stand. I'm like trying to get my shit on. And then I get like out my door into the hallway that like runs the length of this motherfucker. And this dude opens the front door and tracers are skipping off the sidewalk in front of us. And I was like, I am not I cannot do this.
Was that
I'm
a
not in
bath?
this. Yeah, it was a bath.
Yeah, I had one of my Air Force buddies that's a Intel cat. He was on BAF whenever all that stuff happened. This dude is like live streaming it to us on Discord. He's like, "Hey, here's my barracks. You see tracers and stuff going over." And I just rotated out of the country, and I'm like, "Hey, Stuart, buddy, go get your weapon and your kit on, dog." Like, he was like, "No, man, it's good. The army's on their way there." I was like, "Yeah, I know that sounds like it's safe and whatnot, but go grab your weapon and your kit, bro." And he was like, "Do you really think I should?" And I was like, "Yeah, you should probably go get your M4 and your kit right now." And I was like, "If anything, just sit where you're at, but make sure that you're in kit." Um, but that was wild, man. I can't tell you how irritated I was because like God, I would have loved to have been at BAF when that happened, dude. I would have like grabbed somebody and been like, "Hey, you, let's go, follow me."
So we did. We were
Ah.
like, so our armory was like 75 meters away. So we had all our shit. We had to run to the armory for ammo, which was hindsight being 2020. And I could have told them this. This was fucking stupid. Cause like we're on Camp Alpha. I can say it now because like it's all gone.
Yeah,
But like we're on Camp Alpha. It's like the secret place. And to the south of that is like a HESCO wall. So like there's like my barracks, HESCO wall, and then like an open soccer field. And that's where that fucking V bit hit. So like it hit that wall, but it hit a wall that is like surrounded by other walls. So like they hit a wall and then there's a hospital in there. And then there's like an entrance to the hospital. So even if they had successfully like taken that area, they would still have to penetrate another wall and another ECP
yeah.
and then go past a bunch of barracks. But like they hit the worst fucking spot they could have ever imagined to hit because they hit the hospital wall. To the north of that, by like 100 meters, is our barracks, which is like I would say 4 platoons worth of contractors, like who are getting paid literally to do this. And then 40 meters to the north of that is the 82nd Airborne. And then 40 meters to the north of that is Ranger Bat, a platoon of Rangers. And then 40 meters to the north of that is DevGru. And
Yeah.
then with DevGru is an ODA team. Like, like you hit literally the worst spot you could ever imagine. And it was fucking wild because like shit hadn't happened at Bath in what 10 years,
Yeah.
more
It
than
had been a
that.
minute. It was,
Yeah.
I had just left the country whenever that plane crashed in like 2010 or whatever.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one that was like going straight up and then
Yeah.
the
Just
cargo
fucking
came
yeah.
unsecured. Yeah. I had just left the country whenever that happened. It was, it was super wild. Like, I wasn't on main body 1 to come home. I was like main body 3, like one of the later ones. And, there wasn't a whole lot of people on my flight. There was like 30 of us. So we got literally like an entire Boeing 747 to ourselves. Like there's literally like 30 or 40 of us. So I had a whole row of seats to myself for the entire ride home. Everybody did, as a matter of fact. And when we left Germany, I remember like being still kind of drunk and then looking out of the window and being like, what's all that smoke and stuff? Next day, like we land, whatever, and the follow-on flight's supposed to be coming in that night. That Icelandic freaking volcano that erupted in 2010. That's what all that smoke was when we were flying by it. Like it was the early part of the eruption, but it shut down like all the air traffic over the
Yeah.
Atlantic for a while. So like most of my buddies were still stuck in like Germany or Manis Air Force Base in Kyrgyzstan, just sitting waiting for the area to clear so we could come home, or so they could come home. And we were almost completely demobed by the time they got home. Like we were basically already done with our stuff by the time that that main body. Oh,
But it doesn't do what it's intended to do.
it doesn't.
Like so, you said you got a TBI baseline after.
Yep.
See, I got one before. I got the baseline, and then afterwards they just didn't test me. I was like, why did you do it? What's the
Yeah.
point? And
I
then
asked
I
him.
went to the provider, and the provider, I told the provider all the shit, like my pains and all that bullshit. For the first time, I was like honest, and I was like, here's what's going on. Here's when it started. Here's the notes that say that I say it started then from the medics. Like I was perfect. And the guy was like, well, this could be what's happening. So we're not really going to do anything about that. Or this could be the problem. So instead of this, what they wrote down, it's probably this. I'm like, you're literally doing the opposite of what I need you to do. I need you to literally copy what you're not writing onto a piece of paper so that I don't get fucked when I go to the VA in 10 years. Like, that's all I need you to do. That's it.
Dude, you'll be surprised what the VA can find. I'll be honest, because like when I went through, I had to
Oh,
provide evidence
I'm
and
not worried
stuff.
about that. I don't care about that. I don't want some major sitting there making my life difficult when I have to be there, when they told me this is what
Right,
I have to do to complete this. And he's
right.
just sitting there trying to not do it. Bro.
Yeah, a lot of those dudes, like especially the civilian contractors and the doctors, when it comes to demobes and premobes, like they're, and I'm not making excuses for them at all, but you got to think they're probably just as sick of seeing us as we are, because they,
Then quit
yeah,
because
I get,
that's literally your job.
yeah, I'm not making excuses for them
Yeah.
or anything. I'm just saying, like, I always got the vibe that they had much better things to do, like when
Oh,
it
yeah.
came to dealing
That's
with
just,
Army
yep.
civilians or like the active duty doctors, where all of a sudden, like, why aren't you going and seeing your civilian doctor? Okay, I'm sorry. My family medicine doctor is probably not as prepared to handle a traumatic brain injury as you, the traumatic brain injury doctor. Like,
Yeah. Also, this is why you're here. This
yeah,
is literally why you're here.
this is literally your job. And like,
Yeah.
it's one of the things I've always been interested in, like PTSD throughout generations, right? And like, I've done, I can't say case studies because I'm not a doctor, but I've read and I've researched And like World War II, right? Like the average soldier spent, we'll say, like 180 days in combat. That's 6 straight months of getting shot at. That's probably more than anybody in the GWAT can say, because it's literally like 6 straight months of getting shot at.
Yeah,
But the difference
like
between that
close,
was
like
like, yeah, close combat. And like these dudes, from the time that, let's say, their mission or their war was over until the time they got home, a couple months. At fastest, a couple months, like usually 30 to 60 days. You think in that 30 to 60 days, like we see from Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers covered it pretty perfectly what would happen, right? Okay, the war is over, start training for the next one. Okay, you get to go to this school, you get to go to this school, you've got enough points to go home, whatever, but the rest of you that don't, okay, we're reforming the unit and we're getting back into the small things, right? Like marching and formations. Well, with that came the opportunity to decompress amongst the people that you shared that trauma with. Because it's not like Joe Schmo was the only dude who got blown up on his deployment, or Joe Schmo was the only dude who shot somebody. Like 99% of the people in your unit went through the same things with you.
yeah,
So, like, you had a massive amount of time from the time that that stuff happened until the time that you got home to work that stuff out, to talk about it with your buddies, to handle it in like a healthy manner. Well, you look at our generation, man, like I know dudes who got out of firefights and were back home in 36 hours because they were going home on leave or had emergency leave or whatever. Like I know dudes who were literally like were in actual combat and then within 48 hours were back home sitting like with their loved ones. And I don't know, dude, like that's not a lot of time. You know what I mean?
no,
And then
that's yeah,
even the army trying to make you do it for a week, like here's my thing. I would rather you hold me for an extra week or two, or even 30 days after my deployment before letting me see my family to make sure I get all this stuff done and I leave with all my ducks in a row, compared to you flying me home, letting me see my family, and then saying, nah, we own you for the next 2 weeks and you got to come do this. Like, no, 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 dude. Don't give me the option to be with my family until I've completed everything that you've said to do. Because you know
yeah,
as well as I do, once you introduce family that we haven't seen in months, no, we don't care about this army stuff. We're going to lie to the doctors. We're going to lie to the psychiatrists. We're going to lie to S1. Whatever we have to do to get out of there as quick as we can so we can go be with our families. And like, I've seen that hurt soldiers before because they didn't talk to the doctor, because they didn't talk to S1. They didn't make sure their record was accurate. They get their DD 214 and now it's all jacked up and they can't get the right benefits. They can't get stuff from the VA. They can't get stuff from their school or their state. I wonder why. Well, had you actually went through demob instead of going in there and telling them like, yeah, everything is right without looking at it, like, it's kind of like that. Honestly, it just I guess what it comes down to is the camaraderie, right? Like you always hear toxic masculinity and men don't talk about their problems. But if you don't think that our grandfathers weren't talking to each other right now like we are about their problems whenever they were over there on the European front or the Pacific or in Korea or Vietnam, you're wrong, dude. We're dudes, right? Like we're men. We've always been the same. Like what we were doing for fun in the 2000s is what people were doing for fun, as soldiers in the 1920s. They were still painting dicks on everything. You know what I mean? They were still doing all that stuff. Like that's that's why it's like, to me it's really important to validate other service members when it comes to what they went through. It doesn't matter if it's traumatic to me, right? I didn't have to go through it. You did. And if it's traumatic to you, then that's all that matters, right? But we're so ingrained from the military to be proud of what we do, proud of your MOS, proud of your branch, proud of your unit, all this esprit de corps, that like you have to actively shut that off to be a good friend and to be like a good listener, right? Because if you treat it like the army told you to treat it, then 11 Bravos wouldn't listen to anyone else but 11 Bravos. whenever it came to advice or talking about stuff, right? Because we were trained, we were raised that nobody other than us deserves things. We're the reason the sky is blue, right? But if you hear like a Cav Scout and he's like, oh well, we went through A, B, C, D, E, F, and G overseas. Like, I don't care, dog. You're a Cav Scout. Get out of here, right? Like, and it could have been worse, man. Like my biggest thing is relativity, and it's all like in relation to how bad that person thought it was. A walk in the park to me might be not even hard to you, right? My hardest day in combat might be a walk in the park for you. Your hardest day in combat is a walk in the park to a CAG guy. That CAG guy's worst day in combat is a walk in the park to a Vietnam Ranger. Like if it's bad to you, it's bad to you. It doesn't matter. Like if it was bad to somebody else, if it sucked, if it messed you up, it sucked and it messed you up. Like let's identify it and let's get better. Let's find a way to fix it.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this earlier today, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts on it. The and you're a great proponent for this because you deployed earlier. Well, I guess middle of the road for Afghanistan, almost exactly middle of the road, and I deployed at like the end of Afghanistan. Um, but so like when we deployed early on, like my first deployment, your first deployment, it was like to get like a CIB, or like CIB, you got to shoot a dude. Like you got to shoot a
Yep.
dude, or you got to get shot at and then engage them, type of thing.
Yep.
Like towards the, and this is for you, it's like 10 years later. For me, it's like 5 years later, maybe a little more than that. But it was like you could get away with like shooting at some guys and them not shooting at you, and maybe, but it was like it was an individual award. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't really you didn't see the blanketing very much.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like, and I want to start off with I don't think this is wrong. I think it's correct because war has changed drastically, and now soldiers are getting blown up constantly. Like
Yeah.
one way UAS, suicide drones, cluster munitions,
IEDs.
IDF. Yeah. Oh my God. IEDs. Yeah. So, and we were kind of talking this on the change in the army versus tradition, and a lot of people are against like the rules when it comes to like combat and combat arms and CIB awards. But do you think the direction we're going to where war is changing, so should the writ of the award?
Yeah, I think it has to, right? Like that's
It has to.
I think it's common sense almost. If like so war, if you look at it the way we've fought them ever since we've become a country, like we've never really fought one the same exact way, right? Like we're always having to fight a new way. Our war against the British, we were an insurgency, so we were using guerrilla warfare tactics. The Civil War was, force on force. It is what it is. World War One, trench warfare, machine guns, artillery. World War Two, artillery, maneuver, shoot and maneuver. Vietnam, counterinsurgency. Uh, GWAT, counterinsurgency. So yeah, like let's say the infantry for to get a CIB is you have to be engaged in direct combat with the enemy and you have to conduct yourself as an infantryman, i.e., you have to shoot back, like you have to do your job.
Or level par. Like
Right.
if you're doing something, conducting yourself in a manner as an infantryman in combat. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you're not acting like a pansy, you're probably gonna
Yeah.
get your CIB. Um, I know the CAB was something that's like the newest award that came out in like 2004, 2005. The Army came out with the CAB to recognize other MOSs for getting into combat. To me, like I've seen both sides, right? Like I've been on both sides of it. I got my CIB from an IED hit. I took a direct hit from an IED. So me and everyone else in the truck got CIBs because the truck was engaged, and a lot of us came away with injuries. Um, I've seen people get it from direct fire, like the gunner of the truck getting it for direct fire because, and him being the only one getting it because he shot back. And then I've seen um, like maybe a larger tick where all 4 trucks are getting engaged, and I've seen everybody in the platoon get a CIB. How do you know that they weren't shooting at the driver or the TC? Whatever semantics. You can write it up how you write it up. But I do think that when it comes to writing awards specifically for combat valor, things like that, um, I do think you have to take into account the style of conflict that you're in, because charging a machine gun nest isn't as common in GWAT as it was in World War II. Um, Jumping in behind enemy lines and being surrounded and cut off for days doesn't happen in GWAT. You know what I mean? Like,
I will say
yeah,
I don't know my this last deployment, my third deployment. I don't know if I saw a bad guy like bigger IDF, but I never looked the bad guys in the eyes, and I think that is wild. Like that was fucking crazy. So, like my first 2 deployments, when the bad guys were there, the bad guys were there. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Yeah. So like this last one, like maybe like we saw the Russians, but they're not bad guys. They didn't attack us. We saw the PRF didn't attack us. We saw like they pointed their machine guns at us. They rotated their AA guns at us and all that, just to look like assholes. But they never engaged us. And then we got attacked by the Iranian proxy forces. So we never actually saw. At least I did not see them.
I can
So
say on my last deployment that I saw bad guys eye to eye, like face to face, but
mhm.
they weren't armed. They were coming through the
Yeah,
ECP for a Shura.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I think hands down the most pissed off I was on my last deployment was I was at ECP and COIC, so I was supposed to know everything that was supposed to happen that day, and they launched a surprise Shura that they didn't tell me about. So like I've got 100 local nationals at the gate wanting to come in, and they've all got to be scanned and patted down, etc. They got to go through biometrics. We had a biometrics contractor that would do an iris scan, fingerprints, and it would say like, "Oh, this dude's good" or "This dude's bad." Sure enough, he scans this one dude and he's like, taps me on the shoulder and, "Look at this dude." And you look and he's got a rap sheet on there, and it's like he's been to Guantanamo Base twice for combat
hell yeah.
against United States forces. And as soon as I
Let him
look
in.
at that, like, right, so I look at this and then I look at that dude, and I'm like looking at the Afghan, and he's looking at me, and you can tell, like, I'm looking in his eyes, like he would kill me if given the proper opportunity, and he understands that I want to kill him, but they won't let me. And so I bump over and I'm like, "Hey, SOG, I need you up here now." And he's like, he comes up here, and I was like, "Look, I'm not gonna allow this dude on the base. Period." Right? Like I don't care if you stick your hand up his butt and search him. He's not coming on the base. And then so he pushes it up like, "Hey, AP Lightning X-ray or whatever. Be advised, like this person's not coming on the fob." Dude, he didn't even spit that information out before the phone rang, and it's the task force commander who also lives on the fob, who's a 2-star general, and he's like, "You will let this man through." And I was like, "I'm gonna be honest with you, sir. This this is against countrywide policy. This is literally against countrywide policy
It's
as
actually just a
outlined."
terrible fucking idea. Like,
Right. And I was like, these are the literal regulations, right? And here's your signature next to it. So you wrote these rules, and you're saying that you're breaking your own rules. And he was, "Well, we're trying to establish trust." And I was like, "Okay, sir, I'll let him on as long as you sign the log acknowledging that you accept responsibility for him and anything that happens while he's on this fob." And he was like, "If that's what I have to do, but that's going to be your career." And I was like, "All right,
yes,
yeah, way to go, sir. Write it down." And sure enough, dude, he wrote down like, "I, Brigadier General Admiral, accept responsibility for Afghan names such and such and such and such coming on the fob at this time." And I made him put my name in there too. Like, Sergeant Hickman is not responsible. I was like, because if something goes wrong, this dude goes and kills somebody, you're not going to get me, dude. Like, you brought this guy on here. You told me that security didn't matter anymore. You can eat the consequences. But like, it's weird. Like you said, like that's probably the only time I saw the enemy over there. My
yeah.
first
So
deployment,
like,
like it when they like you said, when they were there, they were there. you knew because they were
Yeah.
letting you know they were there. Um, but this last time, it was like it was weird, man. Like I didn't even feel like I was at war. I said for
No,
real, like, it really felt like a JRTC rotation to me,
we said that
like
a
with
lot.
real
So, like
bullets.
we always made the joke that like we're still in Texas. They just flew us in our circle and we're back in Texas,
Dude, I
doing a
used to have
mobilization.
the same for both of my deployments. I had the same conspiracy theory that
Yeah,
they
they just
flew us
flew us
around
around. It was a
and like landed
simulation, the
us
whole
in
thing.
Wyoming. Have you ever been to Wyoming?
No.
Oh my God, dude! I'm about to send you some pictures. Look at this terrain and tell me this does not look like
Well,
Afghanistan
I've
from
driven
afar.
like okay, so I've driven through it. I know what it looks like. I've driven through it.
Right. So when I
Yeah.
went through Wyoming a couple years ago, and I stayed up there for like a couple of days, it looked just like Afghanistan. And I looked over at my buddy Derek, who's in the Air Force, and I was like, "What if I told you that I think the Army flew us around for like 14 hours and then landed us in Wyoming, but told us we were in Afghanistan?" And he was like, "But how could they pull that off?" I was like, "Well, think about it. This is one of the most desolate like states,
How
right?
could they
Not a
not?
lot of people live there. All you have to do is like lock off a certain area and then bring some role players in there. Dude, they could have been Native Americans for all we know."
Anybody that speaks a language that sounds Arabic, I'd be like, "Yep,
Yep.
wa alaikum
Legit.
assalam, dude."
Legit. Um, but that place looks just like Afghanistan, bro. Like just like it.
I said the same. So like we were in my first deployment, we did Iraq, and I was like, I made the same joke. I like doesn't get old because I was like, this looks a lot like fucking Texas, dude. I was sitting there and I was like, flat as fuck, super hot, and a lot of weird shrubbery that looks like it wants to hurt me. This is
Yeah.
Texas. And
My
everyone's like,
first
nah, dude.
I was in RC North for my first deployment. So Kunduz, Takar, Badakhshan, Balkh, Samagan, like all those northern provinces. We did uh, PMT, Police Mentor Team. So each platoon got assigned an AO, and we would have a Afghan National Police District Headquarters. That was basically like our second home, and we built it up a little bit. And we would have this is where we launched missions from. It's the easiest way to put it. Um, but it was like surrounded by rice paddies on three sides. Like our DHQ had like, here's the DHQ. It's like rice paddy, rice paddy, rice paddy, and then just the road that you have to take it on. And we got it. We did a dismounted patrol one day, and it wasn't too far from there. And one of my buddies, we were in contact, and we were just trying to get away because we didn't take enough people. We took like two teams. It was like a squad sized, and we didn't even have a medic with us either. So we were just trying to like bound back to the trucks as quick as we can, break contact, and get back to the DHQ. We're running through rice paddies, and it's awful because we're all falling and slipping because it's just awful to try to run
Fuck
through
that, dude.
stuff. And when we there's this like the ditches, you know how like deep their ditches were over there. There's one where like we have to jump across it. I was like, my team leader's like, go, 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 and I'm like, yeah, cool. So I jump over and like almost die from like breaking my neck from how I landed. And then he's like, he goes and I don't know if his foot slipped or what, but he just like straight into the trench feet first. And we were like, we're still getting shot at, and we're actively trying to drag this man out of safety into the line of fire where we're getting shot at so we could get him out of this ditch. We're like, come on. So we're like pulling and pulling and pulling, and he's like screaming, like, get me out of here. We're like, yeah, we're trying. But when we pulled him up, like the goo kept one of his boots. And he had like some really nice Merrill Mountain boots. And he got up, and we just like beat feet all the way back to the vehicles. And then dude, homie had to wear army boots again for like a month until his replacements came in. But
I'd be
he
fucking
left one of
pissed.
his Merrills in the poop trench.
I'd be fucking pissed, dude.
It was so funny. Like the worst things always happen to this guy, man. Like we were we were on like a pretty extended patrol one day, and it was like we'd been out for like a week because we'd go out for like a week at a time, come back on Friday, go out, whatever. And I was sitting in the gunner's turret, and like you're just carrying on conversations, and I could tell something different about his voice, and I was like, yo, dude, you good? And he's like, I gotta poop, like super bad. And it's like, that sucks. You can't really poop in a truck, right? Like you could pee in a Gatorade bottle, but like don't know what to do. And it's like, guess you're gonna have to hold it. We're still like an hour and a half away from the fob. And I like popped down out of the turret to look at him, and he's visibly sweating bullets. Like he's fighting to hold this poop in with like all of his might. And finally, he's like, "Hey, request permission for an emergency stop because I have to go to the bathroom." So we stop and set security real quick, and he just sprints out into the middle of this field. In the middle of this field is this Afghan dude with like a handheld hoe just going at it, just like tilling his field. This dude stops, like drops trow and just drops like the hugest poop. And like everyone in the platoon is like got their cameras out and we're videotaping this dude taking a poop in the middle of Afghanistan. And he like bumps over on his emitter and he's like, "Somebody bring me some TP." And the lieutenant was like, "Yeah, nah, ain't nobody bringing you no TP, dude. Hurry up and get back to the truck." Um, so he had to like pull his kid up real quick, and you see him cutting strips off of his undershirt and wiping and throwing, cutting, wiping, throwing. And poor dude used like all of his shirt almost. When he came back, he looked like a high school football player in a cutoff tee because he only had like this much of a shirt left, no sleeves. It's just literally like a foot of fabric. Um, I've been trying to track down that video. It was funny because we were just sitting in the turret and you see this dude, he's just like squeezing it out in the middle of this rice paddy. Hilarious, dude. That guy he had some of the funniest things happen to him over there.
I don't think he agrees.
Probably not. But he went on to do some really really cool stuff. So like he was in Fallujah with Big Red 1 back in '07. And then he came to us. He deployed in '08 to Afghanistan. He deployed with us 9 and 10 to Afghanistan. He went back to Afghanistan in 12, went back to Afghanistan in 14, and went back to Afghanistan with us in 18, 19. And now he is the scout platoon leader for the decisive battalion's sniper section.
That's a lot. That is. I'm
Yeah,
tired.
he did some pretty cool stuff because he went to like light leaders course and all sorts of stuff. So he had like
Holy
some really
shit.
cool schools. Yeah, um, he's a dude that just loves soldiering, man.
Yeah, yeah. I
He
mean,
loves
I love
everything about it.
soldering, but like, dude, it gets to you, like, especially like E6, and like, that's a lot of admin. It's a lot of drama. It's a lot of responsibility, and then it's just like nonstop brain function is what it is. I think that's like the
Yeah,
best way to describe it. Like, that's a lot. Now, if I could deploy as like a four, like a non-team leader four, I think that'd be where it's at. Just do what
yeah.
I'm
I
told.
didn't. We had some. I didn't realize that. I knew E5 was going to be hard because you got responsibilities, right? Um,
Yeah.
but dude, I didn't even know how much of the admin stuff, man. Like when we were on deployment in 1819, we our first sergeant was on some active duty exchange program before he retired or something, and so he was huge on admin. So we did monthly counseling statements for E4s and below, quarterly counseling statements for E4s and below. Um, there's just always some sort of admin stuff that had to go on, and it's like I'm having to update these dudes' informations and have them fill out this S1 paperwork, and it's like, why wouldn't I just send them to the talk and have the S1 do it? And they're like, because you're the team leader. It's like, okay, um, but yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't really understand about NCOs, I think, and you don't get it until you become one.
Hmm.
Is there's a lot of behind the scenes work.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
cause me as an E1 through E4, all I saw was my team leader didn't have to do fire guard, my team leader didn't have to do CQ, my team leader didn't have to do all these other duties that I ended up drawing like details and stuff. But when I became an E5, I was the first one out of bed because I have to wake everyone else up. I'm the last one to go to sleep because I have to make sure the team stuff is all good and then go sit with the squad leader and make sure I know what's coming up for the next day. Like if something goes wrong in the middle of the night, they don't go wake them up, they come wake me up.
Hmm.
like, and then like especially E5, because squad leaders always have to go do schools. Squad leaders are probably E5s and E6s are getting sent to schools probably more than any other rank. So your squad leader is going to leave at some point, and now you're going to have to run a squad for X amount of time until he gets back. And like for me, my first test was movement into country. I got handed the entirety of weapon squad and said, "Hey, make sure they get into country safe, make sure everything runs smoothly." And I was like, "Bro, what? I'm an E5. I've been E5 for 5 minutes. What are you doing?" But like, you got two options, I guess. You're either going to get it done or you're not. And luckily, like, I've never been afraid to ask questions. So I went to other squad leaders and was like, "Hey, uh, you got any tips for how I can do this better? Or, how are you doing this to get quicker or whatever?" And it worked and I got it done. But I would say the E5 and E6 are the two hardest working ranks in the Army.
By far, by far, yeah. Like, and it's like you said, nobody sees it until you're in that rank, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. You've been going for 30 hours, and like just shelling out the next fucking day's missions, the next week's missions, putting together
Yeah.
the next platoon thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Every
that's
rank
it's a
you
lot.
get past E4, just add a meeting, add a mandatory meeting at the end of the business day to it,
Yeah,
right? So if you're at E5, you've got one. If you're at
yeah,
E6, you probably got two. If you're in E7, you're looking at three. Every rank you go up, just add another hour of your time
yeah,
and your
or
life that is
more,
now taken
because
from you.
each meeting is probably
Literally.
30 minutes more than the last one for whatever
Yep.
reason.
The first one will be the easiest. The first
Oh
one where
yeah,
it's just like you and the squad leader, that's the easiest. When you get to the
hmm
platoon one, it'll get stupid and then you'll have like
yeah,
45 minutes of people jerking each other off. And then if you have to do a company one, you get to sit there and it's like mission prep, right? I'm a team leader. I have to go sit here and watch this freaking op order and do the terrain analysis and all this other stupid stuff and plot routes. And you're just sitting back there chilling. You're just waiting for me to come tell you, "Hey, we're stepping off tomorrow at this time." I'm the one that's having to go like distribute ammo and figure out how many rounds I need to carry for my machine guns and stuff, and working with the PL to figure to try to allocate how many rounds can be fired before I need him on the objective. Like it's easy E1 through E4. You're just doing what you're told. Like the real scariness comes whenever, like, to me, what kept me up on my first deployment, like before I left, was the thought of losing somebody, like losing a friend. That scared me more than probably anything else. Like I was super gung ho, like you said earlier. Like your first deployment, all you want your CIB.
yeah,
Um, I was that way literally until probably a day or two before I got on the plane, and I can remember laying in bed with my ex-wife and being like, I don't think I want my CIB anymore. And she was like, "What? That's all you've been talking about for like 3 years. What are you talking?" And I was like, "One of my buddies might get hurt. Like somebody. There's a price that comes with that. You know
yeah.
what I
I think I
mean?
would
Like,
rather not get shot at.
right." And that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking. Like, there's a price that comes with that. And I was like, I don't know if it's worth it. Um, and it wasn't. Like that's the most expensive medal the Army ever gave me because it didn't cost $2.15 from the PX. It cost four American lives is what the
hmm
tally of my CIB cost. So like, it's super duper personal to me. But like now, like my last deployment, what kept me up was making a bad decision and getting my troops killed.
oh yeah,
Like I knew that we were going on a pretty low key deployment and there wasn't much that could happen, but like those deep dark nights where you're stuck in your own head, like I was terrified of having to send one of my soldiers, one of my friends to their death, whether it's a good decision or a bad decision, because sometimes things just have to happen.
just that it's
Like,
your decision. That is a lot.
yeah. And I like that was one of the huge parts that killed me mentally whenever I came home early was like I shook all these dudes' parents and wives and families and friends' hands and said, "Yo, I'm gonna take care of your kid. Bring him back safe, whatever." And here I am leaving before them. Like it took me probably a year and a half of like talking to people who were still there, like talking to my therapist and stuff to actually be like, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like luckily nobody got hurt, nobody died or
Yeah,
anything, but like even if they did, like I made a decision for my family, and I guess if I didn't have knowledge of what was going on and had to go do it again, I'd probably make the same decision, you know. Um, but it's, you said earlier, it's wild to see how what your focus on deployments changes to from one to one. You know, it's like first when I really get a CIB, I got a CIB. Now what do I want to do? Nothing,
Yeah,
nothing. Like give me a deployment where we still get to go on
chill.
patrols
I want
and
to be
stuff, but
chill.
like I don't want to get blown up. I don't want to get shot at. I don't want to. Nah.
I don't be constantly looking for shit on the side of the road. It's gonna fuck me up. Just
Yeah, definitely not. Dude, it took me I don't know if this was like a super duper PTSD response like in the moment, but I got blown up in a Humvee. Like I was one of the last people in Afghanistan to get blown up with a Humvee before they changed the rules where you couldn't drive Humvees in Afghanistan. And it took me probably 4 months to get in a Humvee after that. I was like, we would go to get like they would put me in a different platoon to go on a mission for a day or something. And I'd be like, I'm running an MRAP. And they'd be like, nah, we got you in this vehicle as a Humvee. I was like, I'm not getting in that shit.
yeah.
Like, I'm
No,
not
that's
getting in that
fair.
Humvee, bro. Like,
That's
and I
fair,
would tell
dude.
them like I've seen what bombs do to Humvees, dog. I've survived one in an MRAP, and I've survived one in a Humvee. The MRAP looks a lot better, right? Like it's meant to get blown up. I don't want to drive around in something that's not meant to get blown up, right? Like that's a death sentence, my dude. Like at least give me a chance. Put me in an MRAP. And my platoon sergeant was like, just trust your equipment. And I was like, you were in the truck with me when we got blown up. Do you want to get back in a Humvee or do you want to ride an MRAP? And he was like, MRAP. And I was like, okay, then, Sergeant. Like, and he was like, well, we're riding in a Humvee today. And sure enough, dude, he had to talk me into the Humvee. But once we got in there, it's kind of like, hey, dude, if it happens, we're not going to feel anything. And I was like, touche, I guess, because it's like one of those dark thoughts you have over there. It's like, if I'm going to die, how do I prefer to go out? Hopefully quickly, right? Like, I don't want to feel anything. I don't want to be screaming and crying or burning to death or any of that stupid stuff. Like,
Yeah, it's
something
hard.
quick.
Like that is the thoughts that I think stops you from sleeping, my brother. So I don't think it's the actual getting blown up. I think it's the afterthoughts. Because like for me, it's like, and here we go down a dark path in this podcast. But like after like we'll go with the recent one. So like we got cluster bombed in Syria, and I had never been cluster bombed prior, and I can tell you I will never want to be cluster bombed again in my fucking life. Like I'll do a tick, I'll do 107s all fucking day. I'll do whatever, but I do not want to get cluster bombed again because that shit there's shit flying all over the fucking place.
Yep.
There's like it's like a 107 every 10 feet, 200, 300 fucking times, and there's nothing you can do about it. And
Yeah,
I
I'm good
I
on that.
fucking hated that. And
Yeah, miss me with all that.
yeah, for like the next 2-3 weeks, I was SOG at night, and I was like driving around a fucking Toyota Hilux, and I was like, dude, if they hit us with a fucking these 220s again, we are fucked. I'm fucked. I'm in a fucking Hilux, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I would be sitting there in the middle of a field. I'm like, do I want to park here? Do I want to park like closer to the wall? Is that better? But like it hit the wall, and we just had the berms, right? And I was like, so like it hit the wall, it hit the top of the wall, and then the shrapnel like dispersed down like a cone from the top of the wall and hit it. And I was like, okay, so is it better to be by the wall or is it better to be like in the fucking
Right.
field because it's out and up maybe? So
We
like I psych myself out, and I'll probably edit this out of this podcast, but I psych myself out for like 2 fucking weeks where I was like, I don't want to sit in this fucking truck because there's no armor. Cluster bombs are gonna go right through this fucking thing,
yeah,
bro. It's
everything
everything.
gets it. I
So I don't even like the actual event is less traumatizing to me than the thought of it happening again. And I don't
Right.
know.
It was like immediately after I got blown up because I lost consciousness. Like when it went off, I heard it. Like I
Yeah.
heard it go off, and I remember registering a thought, and then the next thing I remember was waking up. Like I remember when it went off. As stupid as this is to sound, like to say, the sound like immediately before I lost consciousness when I heard like kabloom, I was like, man, that sounds just like an arty sim. And then like the next thing you know, I woke up with like blood coming out of my nose and mouth, and my lieutenant's like, drive, drive. And I remember being like, yeah, all right, and like trying to drive, and like nothing was responding properly. And I was like, I think we got a flat tire, sir. And he was like, all right, yeah, whatever. The gunner looks like he's dead, and he's like, no, I'm good. And it's like, okay. And then he's like, pull the truck up, park it up there, dude. There's this big gaping like 20-foot hole that he wants me to park right next to. And I'm like running through the events that just transpired a couple seconds ago in my head, like I was going over a ditch and got blown up. Now you want me to park next to a hole that could hold a lot of stuff to blow me up with. And you want me to park right next to it? And like in my head, I'm panicking, bro. I'm like, oh my God, dude, that's it. This is it. I'm going to go park next to that thing. And when I park next to it, it's going to blow up. It's going to completely destroy my truck. And like, it's going to be bad. And I pulled up and, nothing happened. And then I looked to our front, and probably like 400 meters off, this massive hill. Now people are like gathering on this hill. And I'm like, oh no, like here I am, PFC, you know, just experienced my first combat seconds ago, and I am still terrified. I don't have any bearings on what's going on. Like, all I know is it's me and five other dudes at this point, and we're in the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan. Like, I don't even remember where we were at. Like, I know where we're at now, but in the moment, like, I didn't even know where we were at. I didn't know what the village was called. I didn't know what province we were in, basically, because we weren't in the same province. Like, I knew we were on a mission, and bad stuff happened, and like I can remember looking up at that hill and being like, that's a nasty spot for a machine gun. And then I was like, machine guns can't really shoot through Humvees. But then I was like, what if they have a Dishka though?
Dishka can shoot through a fucking Humvee.
Yeah, I was like, what if they have a Dishka? So I'm like super scared, and like the lieutenant makes me and the platoon sergeant get out and change the tire on a Humvee. I never even changed a tire on a car at this point. So like, here's 20-year-old me freaking undoing 72 lug nuts in a Humvee and trying to put a tire back on, and like the whole time just being completely terrified that the Hun army is over the top of that hill that I've been putting eyes on every second or two. Um, Dude, I psyched myself out so much that day. Um, when we went to drive back to the base, like my lieutenant was like, "We got blown up on a ditch," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm very aware." And he was like, "So from now on, every time we're driving over one, you just gun it." And in my head, I'm thinking like, "All right, that's a solid plan, right? Like we'll trade speed for security, right? Like I get it, right? Speed, security, okay." But then like as soon as I had that thought, it was like, what if they blow us up while I'm going that fast? And then it's like crazy conversations you have to have with yourself as a 20-year-old service member in a combat zone is like, if today is the day, might as well be going fast, right? Like you might as well be doing 50 in a Humvee when you get blown up instead of 12,
Yeah.
like, and it's such weird. Like as I've gotten older and I guess more mature and calmed down a little bit, like I look back on some of the thoughts that we have to have as service members and some of the conversations we have to have with each other and even conversations we have to have with ourselves at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old when you get thrown into a combat zone, because we'll call a spade a spade. Nobody joins the military knowing what combat is like. You can say, yeah, I want to go to combat. I know what it's like. You don't. You literally don't. You don't know until you've been there, right? But like the more impactful part of that is you don't know the kind of conversations you have to have. You have to start making some really, really adult decisions and adult like way of thinking. You might not even be an adult yet mentally, you know? Um,
Yeah, it's join the military in a. I'm not. I don't even know if time of war now. Shit, because we're out of GWAT. But join the military when we're in active combat, regardless of whether or not it's a time of war. That is that brings about a whole new breed of human being. Like
yeah.
the dudes that we were with for like our deployments when they're 18, 19, 20, they are not the same 18, 19, 20 year olds that you grew up with. They are a
Nope.
completely different type of person. But
I think the hands down most negative thing, and I don't even know if it's negative, but like the most hurtful thing that anyone has ever said to me, um, it's like 2 or 3 days after coming back from my first deployment, my grandmother looked at me and was like, "This isn't the same Corey." Like, what? Like, dude, that broke my heart. Like,
Yeah,
I was sitting there trying to think because, like, I'm a pretty empathetic person. Like, I'm pretty decent at putting myself in other people's shoes and
yeah,
trying to see what they're feeling. And all I could think at that time was like, here's my grandmother that knew this 20-year-old, loves the world, happy go lucky, out and about, you know what I mean? Like, very exoteric personality, like, really cool, like, gets along with everybody, goes to Afghanistan, comes back, doesn't really want to talk to people, doesn't want to go out and do things, like, has an aggressive bone now. Like, and I get it, but it's unrealistic to expect anybody, man, woman, whatever, to go 13,000 miles away from home for a year. You don't even have to experience combat. Just go live in a third world country for a year. Give yourself very minimal support on, like, the American side. So, like, shoddy Wi-Fi and a shoddy cell phone to call home on, and just live in a third world country for a year and see how those people have to struggle to survive. See the evil that happens in some of these places in the world, because it's not like we went to Mexico, right? We went places where they were beheading women in the streets. We went places where they're stoning children, where they're killing innocent people. A lot of times there's nothing we can do about that, and you're forced to just kind of sit and watch, or sit and take in that information, because that's not your mission, right? It's impossible to think that you could take somebody who grew up in America with all of the freedoms and all of the luxuries that we have, and you remove a bunch of that and put them in an environment which is totally foreign to them, where everything is hostile, everything is trying to kill them. The plant life, the water, everything. Because if you drink the water over there as an American, you might not die, but you're going to hope you did. Um,
you might die.
yeah, you might legit. But, it's unrealistic to think that you could send somebody anywhere and them see that level of despair, I guess is a good word. Because that look the Afghan people had, that tired, when is this going to stop, this rugged, like,
Their eyes are dead. Those people
literally,
eyes are
literally.
fucking dead.
You're looking at them and, like, it makes you feel bad, bro, because, like, you start thinking, what do these people deal with on a day-to-day basis? You know what I mean? And, like, I came back so confused from my first deployment because, like, we went over there to help people and kill bad guys, but yet we would conduct missions point blank after the Taliban said that they were going to kill women and children that we aided. And then, like, the very next day we would set up, you know, um, like a medical drop, and we hand out food and supplies or whatever. Um, a med pack, I guess is what they're called. And 2 or 3 days after we did that, there'd be a line of dead women on a route that we would drive, because they're sending their message, like, if you're going to help these people. And it's like, I was so conflicted as a 20, 21-year-old dude. Like, I want to help these people, but I don't, because me handing this woman a sack of rice to feed her and her kids is probably going to be the thing that's going to get her killed. You know what I mean? Like, I think, if I had to be honest, I think I was bothered more about what I observed over there than what I participated in.
No,
I
that's
didn't
fair.
really
Yeah.
see any bad stuff happen American wise, like no war crimes, no craziness or anything like that. Like, we had some near misses, and we had some things like bombing and a fueler that killed 200-ish civilians. That wasn't exactly cash money of us, but um, I was more bothered about just the life over there, just seeing how men treated children, seeing how men treated women, seeing how it was for them. Like, it was sad, right? And that's, like, all they know is the oppression and, like,
Weaponizing the populace and the
yep,
youth against the insurgents, or sorry,
yep,
the infidel.
right. And the crazy thing is, like, you kill a bad guy, right? You get into a tick and you kill a bad guy, and you send up your report that you killed 5 dudes. Of those 5 dudes, probably two of them were actually Taliban.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
other three were probably just some poor schmuck that they showed up to minutes before with an AK and said, if you don't come with us, we're going to kill your family.
Yeah.
So
Or
he's going out to do what he's got to do to protect his family.
or is the kid of the mom who got killed for her rice
Yep.
that got told, "Hey, if you don't come with us, we'll kill the rest of your family." Or
Yep.
he saw
The
that his
kid
mom
that you
got killed
killed
for
his
giving
dad.
rice to you. Yeah.
Yeah, the kid you killed his dad or his uncle because his uncle was forced to do something by the
Yeah.
Taliban. Like it, it was really really wild, and it took me a couple years of like introspection and taking like some really really hard looks at that to figure out like how I felt about it. And honestly, that all started with us leaving Afghanistan on TV and being like, well, now I have no choice but to deal with deal with these issues. Like, how am I going to view this? And I I just took it as me and everybody else who went over there. We all signed up to do something, whether that was to go to war or not. We all signed up to defend, protect the United States. Did we protect the United States? That's not for me to pass judgment on. I will say that in my instance and the people around me, we did the best we could with the tools we were given and the guidelines to do it in. Um, we were handicapped by policy in a lot of different areas in Afghanistan back in 9 and 10. Um, Soldiers don't lose wars; commanders do. Is my easiest way to put that. I think everybody who went over there did something honorable. You know, you signed up for a cause that was greater than yourself. You wrote that blank check to the U.S. government up to and including your life, and you went to the bank. You know what I mean? You didn't just hold on to it; like you went to the bank, and it's an honorable thing to do. You know, serving your country is something to be proud of. If they want to call it a loss, I I don't see any criteria to grade it as a win or a loss because if you go off body count, we won. If you go off changes we made, it still kind of looks like we won. Um,
Hey, if you so I good fucking yep. So I looked at an article I think 2 days ago, and the Taliban is now conflicted because the newest members, and by newest I mean what we would consider to be like privates and specialist guys who
yeah,
were not really alive during 9/11, um, are now experiencing Western culture and the ease of Western life for the first time, are like, why are we doing what we're doing? So right now there's conflict in the Taliban because the old school Taliban is like, hey, we did this so we can get rid of Western culture. But the new Taliban guys are like, I have Wi-Fi, I have air conditioning, I have an easy lifestyle, I'm not living off the land, and I don't have to fight a massive military power every day to stay alive.
yep.
So like there's this huge conflict in the Taliban right now. I was reading an article about it. It was great. You should. Oh God, who wrote it? I'll look it up after this and I'll send it to you because it is fucking great. But
It's
do you
that reminds me
remember?
a lot like you know how I kind of equate it to being a professional fighter, right? Like those dudes are hungry and they're ready to be world champ. And then as soon as those checks start rolling in, it ain't as easy to get up at 4:30 and go get punched in the face
No.
anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, dude. Like, yeah, you were having fun with us, but we gave you a little taste of what it's like, and now you're like, whoa, Mullah Omar over here. I don't know if he's capping right now. Like, I need to hop over here with the Americans. Like,
So what types of things did you use to kind of get you out of that over vigilant mentality where like coming home, resetting, getting back into a good mindset?
it was challenging at first. Um, when I first got back, because I was still all super hyped up, and I played a lot into my ego back then, so I was very very proud of the fact that I had just survived a deployment. Um, and I was pretty boot back then, so I wasn't afraid to tell you I just got out of a deployment. Um, Honestly, I think what ended up kind of helping was as stupid as it sounds, you just have to remind yourself that you're home, right? Because like home doesn't look anything like Afghanistan. Home doesn't operate anything like Afghanistan. I would catch myself looking to everybody's hands everywhere I was going. Like I never really made eye contact. I
Mm-hmm.
was always scanning for people's hands. I could tell you who had a gun. everywhere we went because of their body language and how they were standing and stuff. And then it felt like, I don't know, I was like proud to be able to pick stuff out like that. And then I was like, dude, what am I doing? I'm really just kind of scaring myself, if
Yeah,
that makes
chill,
sense.
bro.
Yeah, like if I'm looking for a reason to make everybody a threat,
Yeah.
then everyone will be a threat. If I'm not looking for anybody to be a threat, then it is what it is. I never really had problems with fireworks. Uh, to me, it's a
Yeah, me
completely
neither.
different sound. Like you
Yeah.
can, not to mention, you get a pretty good stimulus before it blows up to tell you it's a firework. Um, Honestly, the biggest thing I would say for anyone when it comes to tackling any sort of like residual effects from the army or deployments or anything is you have to want to. That's the biggest determining factor, is like you have to want to. It's the same thing as like go into a selection or go into anything that's going to challenge you. You have to be in it for the right reasons to succeed, because life is going to check you on it. If it never fails, every time I tell myself that I'm going to work on something, within a week, within a month or two, I will get checked on that issue by life. And it's almost like okay, here it is. Like, are you gonna keep cussing, or are you gonna clean up your language? Or are you going to keep trying to find a reason to make everyone a threat? Or are you just going to accept the fact that 99.9% of people are just going about their daily lives oblivious to you, whatever? And that's how it should be, right? Like, we're all just going out doing our own things, not really taking all that into account. And I used to get so, because I went to therapy for a while. And I would encourage anybody, regardless of what issue it is that you're trying to tackle, like, just go talk to a therapist, man. Like, an outside perspective never hurts. It gets kind of a bad rap. Like, they're going to sit there and tell you you're crazy. That's not how it works. A therapist is almost just like a professional friend, if that makes sense. You can tell them all sorts of stuff, and they can't tell other people, and they can help you work your way through it. But even a therapist is going to tell you, like, you have to want to do it. There is no
Hmm.
magic. There's no magic fix. There's no pill. There's no go into therapy. There's no, go join an fishing group, or those are all great things. And I'm not saying any, detracting from them, but like, the way that I found success and the way that I found effective in working on these things was to, one, try to figure it out at the core of the problem. Like, why am I looking at this trash bag on the side of the road so intently? Oh, I'm worried that it's going to blow me up. Why am I worried that it's going to blow me up? Because I got blown up in Afghanistan. Is this Afghanistan? No, this is Georgia. Okay. And then, like, I just logic myself through things. I try to think about the logic or the academic answer for it. And I will kind of just put myself through a board, if that makes sense. Like, I'll ask myself questions and I'll answer them in kind. And if I don't like my answer, I deal with it.
Yeah. Do
Um,
not promote above peers. Yep.
yeah. Um, and another thing that, like we talked about earlier, relativity.
Hmm.
My trauma is my trauma. That doesn't make it any worse or any less than anyone else's trauma, but it's mine. I don't have a monopoly on it. I'm not the only person who's dealing with what I'm dealing with. People have done it before. And I found strength in that, because if other people can do it, I can too. I'm not somebody that looks at a task and says, I can't do that. Like, there's a couple things, yeah, if it involves math, I'm out. But for the most part, like, there's not too many things that I look at and say I can't do. I feel like if I truly apply myself and I work hard enough and I was disciplined enough, that I could do pretty much anything that I set out to do within realism. Um, but just holding on to that strength of other people have managed to overcome this, and knowing that I'm not the only person that's dealt with it, and knowing that, like, it's not an end all be all, right? Like, it's not a bad thing to be hyper vigilant per se, right? Like, situational awareness is a good thing. Like, everyone should have a really good sense of situational awareness, and hypervigilance is just increased in situational awareness. But like we don't need to be walking around combat keyed up to have that kind of situational awareness. Like I don't need to be actively scanning fives and 25s in a car or when I'm out walking in America. Like, and you'll have people try to justify it by saying, well, there's school shootings and look at what happened at the Kansas. Still minuscule, minuscule. I've lived 35 years on this earth, and you know how many times I've been around gunshots in America, like in the active area where shots are being exchanged in violence? Zero. You know what I mean? If I'm ever in that situation, I hope I respond in kind. But like, I don't sit around and dream for that. I don't sit around and prep for that. I don't sit around and feed into that line of thought, right? Because to me, my biggest problem was the coming up with the scenarios in my head. Like I go to Kroger and somebody comes in the front door shooting.
Yeah.
How do I get out of the back and then get to my car, get my kit, and then go in there and eliminate the threat? What? That's stupid, dude. Get off the X. That's not my job. Get out of there. Save your own life. Take some people with you. Get out of there, right? Like, and in my divorce, I learned a lot of it too. You know, like we see memes about it, like the arguing with the shampoo bottles. Like I should have said this.
Yeah.
World's worst at that is me, hands down. I will literally, when I'm laying in bed tonight, I will think about this podcast and I will come up with something better that I should have said.
It's
Right.
okay. Yeah. It's
um,
fine, dude. But
and
you're right, the military, and I didn't realize that I did it until one of my friends, um, we were playing some stupid fucking game. And he's like, yeah, like I've had these been doing this weird shit, and he deployed with me for the first time this past year or whatever it was, and he was like, yeah, we do this weird thing where like I just think of like these fucking wild scenarios, and it just like plays out in my head, and I get anxiety about it, and like I would like standing in a fucking line, like in like standing in line at Starbucks, and I'd be like, well, what if the guy behind me has a gun, and
yep,
what if he decides he wants to rob the Starbucks right
yep.
now, and what if he is wearing a kit underneath his trench coat, and like
What if he's
I
gonna
was like,
pull my head back and cut my throat as the first thought?
yeah. So like I was like, dude, like I didn't know that other people had those like
Yeah,
weird
dude.
thoughts. Like sitting
Yeah,
like you're
dude.
just like standing there and you're like, what if that car right there is an IED? And you're like, it could be. Look, the trunk looks heavier than the rest of that car. So like that could be a fucking VBID. If that's a VBID, how big is the blast radius? Do I get out right now to make sure everyone's going to be away from that? And you're like, it has nothing to do with anything that's going on, but you're just like, these weird scenarios just pick
Yeah,
up in your
dude.
head. Like,
It
and
would
yeah,
be
okay. I
that, or
think
like,
that might be PTSD. That might be PTSD, but
it might be being a man, dude. Because
I don't know.
there's sometimes I'm out driving in public and like I dissociate during a long drive, and I'll have like this weird daydream of me getting in a running gunfight with a random amount of adversaries, like bounding through
Right?
the Georgia woods until I get to a point that I can't bound anymore, and I have no point but to turn and fight and go out like a
You're
man.
a bias control. You are a bias
Yeah.
control. You cannot. We need a civilian male, like ages like 18 to 34, to be like, hey man, you ever any like crazy fucking thoughts randomly throughout the day, like action movie Arnold Schwarzenegger type shit?
No, I haven't been daydreaming about being a machine gunner on D-Day.
Yeah, like
No, I hadn't had literal sitting there like wet dream fantasies about being a machine gunner on D-Day. And like if you think about it, like that's a pretty cool thought, terrifying, but like pretty cool to think like I'm in an impenetrable bunker with something that fires 2100 rounds a minute and I just get to go ape on people with no cover. Like machine gunner's wet dream, but probably
I
not a
think
normal train of thought.
but I don't know. I think we need a civilian. I think we need a civilian on this podcast, and I think they need to like check the crazy shit. Just be like, "Hey, man, I've never had those thoughts." And you'd be like, "All right, okay, so it's us. All right, cool," and then we'll move on. But no, this is a good idea. I think so. You guys did that ask the civilian thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shit was fucking hilarious. By the way, that was good. I
Yeah,
like
he
that a lot.
he came up with that like shooting from the hip one day. I think he was we were supposed to record with somebody else, so they weren't available. And then I think I was at a wedding, so I couldn't be available. And he was like, "I'm just gonna like just
That
throw
was
this on
good.
there."
I like
I
that a
think
lot.
we did military trivia one time with me versus the Nasty Guard, and that was pretty funny. It was like random questions, like the max effective range of a 240 or random stuff. I think we have another trivia episode coming up. One of my best friends is a training NCO for a commo unit down in Florida, and he has to come up to Gordon for some like commo training or whatever for a few weeks. And I think we're gonna do trivia because he was artillery before he was commo, so it's gonna be like King of Battle versus Queen of Battle, like random army trivia mixed in with like some sports because he's a sports dude. But I really like the
Fuck yeah.
idea of bringing a civilian on there and literally let's just ask them like questions
Like
about things that
bounce
we do
random
and we
shit,
think.
our
Yes, and
brain,
let's
like
see,
bounce
are
our
we really
brain off
messed up?
them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Be
because I
like,
asked my
is it,
therapist and she's like, "Yeah, no, this is normal." And I'm like, "Yeah, for your client base, bro.
yeah,
You work
but
for
your
the VA."
bias, you
Yeah.
bitch. Like, come on.
Yeah, you work for the
You can't,
VA.
yeah, you're lying to me and I fucking know it.
She was joking around one day because I went in there super angry, like super duper angry, and I was basically just like feeding into all my deployment emotions and stuff. And I was like, "I'm gonna go to Russia right now. I'm a Javelin crew member. I go over there and wipe out like 30 tanks. I've been trying to get a tank kill." And she's like, "Got a step away from putting you in a glass case that says break in case of war." And I was like, "Is that a bad thing?" And she was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, yeah, nah, I'm just kidding. I don't want to get blown up by a
Normal
tank."
people would consider that a bad thing.
I was like, "I'm just kidding. I don't want any part of near peer warfare."
I think about that a lot,
Yeah,
which I think is normal.
I I'm very thankful that our war was GWAT and not Vietnam because I'm man enough to tell you that I couldn't survive in a jungle, not long at least. World War II, no, I don't not die into artillery. Like,
I'm yeah, that oh yeah. But I'm more cool with fighting that than I am with like getting smoked by a FPV drone. Like
fair enough, fair enough, dude. If
that's
I
like
had to
a
pick a war to fight in, I guess World War II. Because World War One, that just would have been miserable. World War Two, at least you had somewhat of a chance, depending on what front
yeah,
you were on.
but that's that's a good question. So you out of all the wars America's fought in, you'd pick World War II.
I think so, dude. Because like, I, I'm just thinking like modern wars, right? So
Uh
starting
huh.
with World War
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
World War One, you're probably going to die in a trench from
Yep.
any number of things that weren't combat, right? So you're probably
Yep.
going to die outside of combat in World War One equally as much
Hmm.
as you're going to die in combat.
Or from like something crazy like mustard gas or a flamethrower
Yeah,
or like
yeah,
yeah
right. And the tank just
rats.
showed up. So there's lots of things that
Yeah.
just got introduced to modern warfare, like the machine gun, artillery, tanks, flamethrowers, gas. No, I'm not down for any of the experimental stuff
And
out of
if you
World War.
survive all that, you're gonna get bayoneted by some 19-year-old kid. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, there it is.
Or shoveled to death.
Yeah, World War II. Like if you're in the European front, I think you got it a little bit easier, right? Because you get like 4 seasons, so it's hot and then it's cold and then whatever. If you're in the South Pacific, it's just hot 24/7. So like,
But hear me out. So what something I never thought about, they're island hopping. So you're doing like 2, 3, 4 days of combat, and then you're back on a ship going to the next island. You get like, you know, two,
yeah,
3, 4 days off, fuck off on the ship, and then back to island hopping. I'm not saying island hopping is fun. And I'm not saying fighting the Japanese is fun because that would suck. But compared to like D-Day into Carentan, into like you know what I'm saying? Like you're going from Normandy to Berlin.
I think you had different. Not only were the enemies different in how they fought, so like the Japanese were very much fighting to the last man. The Germans were like common sense, right? Like once they lost, they were like, all right, yeah, no more people need to die. But I feel like you saw two different kinds of warfare too. Like in the early stages of the war in the Pacific, you had to deal with the Japanese Air Force as well. and their navy like bombarding you with artillery and air or whatever. But for them after that, like we owned the skies. When you were in like the European theater, you may own the skies, but they still have guns that can reach out and touch you, like artillery wise. And then they still, you
Mm-hmm.
talk massive amount of tanks and armored personnel. Um, if I had to choose between one of the two to fight, I think I would have rather fought in Europe, honestly, because like
No,
the
I agree
ter-
with you.
the terrain and the style of fighting to me seems more survivable than island hopping because the Japanese were determined. You know what I mean? Like these dudes were literally holding down entire islands with minimal amounts of people because they were just that dug in and were that determined to fight to the last dude.
No, I
Vietnam would have
agree with you.
sucked. Like Vietnam
I'm
would have
de-
sucked. We lost a ton of dudes at Nam. So like that style of warfare kind of appeals to me because it's more like GWAT, right? Like you're ranging, you're patrolling, you're finding stuff, whatever, and then like
talking
pull
about
back to the
Vietnam.
rear. Yeah. But at the same time, like Vietnam, the booby traps, I mean, I've seen people go make videos in the jungle and you can't see 5 feet in front of you in the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's some scary stuff. The enemy being within arm's distance and you not being able to touch it, and then not to mention like snakes, spiders, bugs, frogs, the water, the environment's trying to kill you. They're being supplied by a proxy that has we'll say on par equipment, so they're getting near peer equipment. Um, and I won't be a pansy and say freaking the Gulf War. Like that wouldn't have been any fun. You would have spun me up for 6 months to send me over there for 90 days, and I wouldn't have got to shoot at anything or blow anything up. Nah. So I think if I had to choose, I would go like World War II, Vietnam, World War One. I absolutely would not want. I love playing World War One video games, but I would want absolutely no part
No,
of.
I agree with you. Also, to like a noble, may have not known it at the time. Probably you could because the Germans were trying to invade the rest of the world, so that's pretty noble. But they didn't know about all like the Holocaust shit till later.
Yeah.
But like, that's a noble war. So
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah. Yeah.
agree with you. World War II, I would go Korea,
Oh,
and
Korea
then
was nutty.
yeah. Also, it's like it's pretty cut and dry. Like the Chinese and the Koreans, you just
Yeah.
everybody you shoot them. So like that was pretty cut and dry. I think that is the appeal. Uh, Vietnam, oof, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. It's the air assault for me, dude. I don't know what it is, but there's something that just makes my weenie tickle whenever I think about riding into combat, like on the side of a Huey or on the side of a Black Hawk, jumping off on a hot LZ and banging it out for a few hours, and then and granted that I'm sure it's much worse. Matter of fact, I know it's much worse than what I portray in my head, but I
I
don't
don't
know,
want to deal
man.
with like the environment and the bugs and like you said the booby traps. That's the shit that gets me. Like
Yeah, I
I'll do the gunfights in the jungle. That sucks, but like
you can learn that.
that's
You can get used to
yeah.
it.
But I don't want to fuck with like I just stepped in a pit of punji sticks. That's
Yeah, I'm not trying to die like to a snake. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
Or like a crazy ass fucking millipede.
because like everything I've read about being in the Chosen up there was like it was not good. Like that was
We
apparently hell
so I
on
had to
earth.
do oh fuck what was it? It's my ALC war war studies, whatever the fuck ALC. I had to do like a in depth report on the
Yeah,
a war battle or whatever. I chose the Battle of Chosen, and like I didn't know like a lot about Korea, which is why I picked it because I know a decent amount about World War II, World War One, and all the other wars, but like no one talks about Korea. Nobody knows about Korea. So I did my whole report on that, and I was like, holy fucking shit! Like, first of all, we had like a massive amount of friendly fire incidents, and
yeah,
we actually like lost that fucking war. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got pushed out of Korea by the Chinese.
yeah,
So, I mean, we lost. And then like the casualty listings are fucking wild. Like they're like, yeah, so like the ground commander, like the battalion commander disappeared. And you're like, well, how'd the fucking ground commander disappear? Like, what was he doing to where he could have disappeared? You're like, whoa, well, he ran out onto the ice and chosen and was never seen again. You're like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, can you imagine hearing that today in a report in the front lines? Be like, yeah, the battalion commander walked out into the desert, was never seen again.
Me
What?
and me and my best friend were having a conversation similar to this the other day about friendly fire in World War II. Um, have you seen the Pacific?
Yeah,
Okay, so you know towards the like every scene where they're doing a beach landing, there's dudes that are actively on the beach engaged in combat trying to like crawl forward. Meanwhile, every landing craft and boat behind them is actively firing onto that beach. If you're in an Amtrak man in a 50 or a 30 and you're doing this the
yeah, fuck
entire
that.
time, like it really made me think like how many dudes straight up got shot in the back during a beach landing because the landing craft behind them by 100 meters is trying to suppress the enemy on an unstable firing platform. And like you're just, and I tried to Google it and it said it was like 3% fratricide rate or something. And I was like, that's got to be watered down because
No way.
I've been watching that new Banner Brothers style show, like Masters of the Sky or whatever.
Great show.
And right. And then like the first
You watched the
episode
episode yesterday?
yes, thank God, dude. I was so sad until I watched that. Um,
Oh, come on. You saw that coming. We're not going to spoil it. Don't worry, but you
yeah,
saw
I
it
kind
coming.
of did, but I was hoping. But like you see, they're engaging all these planes in a formation and
Yeah,
stuff, and like, what are their fire control measures to not shoot
there
friendly
aren't
forces?
any.
Right. So that makes me think like me as a 20-year-old private was very, very target fixated, bro. Like once I established that I had a target and I could see it, that's all I could
Yep.
see.
Yep.
I didn't have big picture yet. So all I could see was what I was shooting at. I hadn't developed that extra like situational awareness to not shoot my friends and stuff, right? That's why we have team leaders. But it made me think like 20-year-old me on a 50 trying to shoot at a plane, I'm probably going to let a couple rounds go loose into a friendly plane too, you know, like on accident, obviously, but like there's no way we fought that entire war with like unobserved fires, no friendly fire control measures, and only came away with 3% fratricide. Like
Well,
there's
they
no
also
way.
had no way to. They weren't. They probably weren't tracking it. They had no way to prove it. So it was like,
There.
you know what sounds good? 3%,
Yeah.
which
It's
does
probably like
because there's no
30.
way, and I don't know because I haven't done the research. I don't know, but there's no way that our fratricide rate in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria together is 3%. No way. It's got to be
Yeah,
higher.
I read some report that there was a bad bombing mission or a plane that had to jettison its bombs, like you see in the show. If they can't make it, they'll
Yeah,
just dump their bombs and turn around. But this dude dumped his bombs and ended up taking out like half a division because they were all in like this one spot, right? Like getting ready for their next mission or whatever in the rear. Dude jettisons his bombs and then wipes out like two brigades worth of dudes in a friendly fire bombing run. And it's like, it's hard for me to fathom war scale or war on that scale. You know what I mean? Like a world war. Because if you think about it, Afghanistan was kind of sort of like that, right? Like it wasn't being fought all over the world, but it was a
but
lot
it
of
was
people from all over the world fighting in
yeah.
one spot. And it just made me think like, let's say World War III kicks off with the current players we have now, Russia, China, whatever. Like, I can't like mentally fathom continents, like entire continents being at war. Like we don't have to worry about that in America. We're isolated. But like
Well, I mean, the best you're gonna get is what's happening in Ukraine with Russia right
yeah.
now. Like you having a massive front. It's huge. It is huge, and it's not all the countries, but it's weapon systems and training from all the countries, and it's a lot of people who came from around the world to fight on the
Yep.
front, both sides. Which I didn't know until today that a lot of Americans went to fight for Russia. I saw like there's a video of a bunch of Americans planting a flag and at Kiva at Vika. I can't say the fucking thing, but planting an American flag on the city they just took for Russia. So it's happening. It's just not the same. You know what
I
I'm
mean,
saying?
do you know who Johnny Walker Lind is?
Sounds familiar.
He was an American who defected to the Taliban in 2001. right after
Yes.
9/11,
Yes.
and then they recaptured him in at Camp Mike Span in Mazi Sharif. He
Hmm.
was one of the prisoners up there. Same thing with him, bro. Like I was dumbfounded because I didn't know a lot of the history of Afghanistan until I showed up, and then I started trying to spin myself up in country. So I read like The Bear Went Over the Mountain, about the Russian combat experience in Afghanistan. I read The Other Side of the Mountain, which was the Afghan combat experience versus the Russians. And I started reading books like Horse Soldiers and stuff. And I learned that like when we landed, our battalion headquarters was in Mazi Sharif, and we had to drive by that facility where the prison was. And they were like, "Yeah, this is Johnny Walker Lind," and I looked it up, and I was like, "Yeah, it's crazy. It was some basic white dude from California that's decided that he wanted to be in the Taliban, and literally left and went and fought with the Taliban for a couple months, and we ended up capturing him."
Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do, but we will kill you.
Yeah, pick a side. Just hope it's the right
Yeah,
one.
pick a side.
Just hope you play for the right one. I am Ados Acktual. That's ADOSACKTUAL on Instagram, or you can look up The Nasty Guard, all one word, and a lot of my stuff is attached to our main page. I super appreciate you guys taking time to have me on. We loved having you guys on. Um, Nice to kind of switch, I guess, and be on the other side of the microphone this time. It was tons of fun, dude.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And hey, in the future, I'm sure we'll have you guys on again. And look forward to getting Craig on here, get his little bitch ass into our podcast. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and hit us up, the Real Bunker Bros at the Real Bunker Bros, Instagram, Twitch. We're gonna put up some videos later. Um, Subscribe to our YouTube where this will be, and if you're not listening to us on podcasts or Apple, then we'll be on YouTube. So once again, Corey, thanks for having you. Make sure you guys follow his podcast, the Nasty Guard podcast, and tune in next time for episode 4.
Incoming, incoming, incoming.